for the purpose of training or just to hang out. Do that. So, and yeah, so yes, you can do that.
I think that would be a great time. I want to do it.
What's that one?
That's November 9th, 10th, 11th.
Oh, cool.
And it will be at the Portland Marriott. You get rooms at the Portland Marriott, and then you have meals there, and there's like hospitality rooms, and then gobs of classes, lots and lots of them, and general session speakers. So it's really fun, and you know folks from all over Oregon show up there.
When is it?
November 9th, 10th, and 11th. I think it's the Thursday, Friday.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
No, it's Thursday, Friday,
So 10,
Saturday.
11, 12.
The 10, 11, 12.
And then there's Sunday morning as well. There's sessions. Hot Topics, I think, is Sunday. Anyway, we're still working on the programs for annual convention. So,
Okay.
but it's, yeah, if you've never gone, it's pretty cool. Yeah. So you'll be able to meet with board members from little towns like yours to the biggest ones in the state. Yeah, it's really neat. What's exciting? Yeah, and
For me, just seeing how to actually work together. The first meeting stressed the heck out of me. I'm sorry.
The last year has been stressful, so I
Yeah,
agree
yeah.
that I feel like we have a good team.
good,
I think it's getting better. I
good,
think we still need a little more time to kind of gel together.
sure.
But I think we all have really strong things that we bring to the table, each one of us.
I agree. Linda, what's good?
I just think we're getting organized, and I have to tell on Christine a little bit. I was so nervous the first two meetings that I was the board chair, and when she took over, she kind of went. And I'll never thought I would see that from her, but we have grown a lot. Christine and I have taken some crisis things and really grown with them, and I've been pleased with that.
So you're vice chair
Mhm.
and Ristine's running the show.
No, actually, we're all running the show.
We'll talk more about the role of the chair tomorrow. Yeah. So I mean, basically, Sean and I talked about, what does this board need, coming out of what you guys have come out of. I mean, what do you need? And then basically we're going to do it all in 2 days. I originally had conceived this as like stretched out over some months, but we're not. We're just going to open your heads and just pour all kinds of really good information in there, and we'll see how much sticks. So what are you struggling with still? Gelling, I heard, coming together and
Yeah.
getting
I'm struggling
cohesion.
with the cleanup in our school. It's still a mess. I'm hearing things from, I had another teacher come in today and telling me about the mess that they feel that the school is still in. And how they're still really uncomfortable with some things. And I said, well, the first thing you need to do is go to Sean. You need to write it all out, go to Sean, and explain how you feel.
Yeah.
And, let us work on it. We're working on it a little bit at a time, but I guess it's really hard to see. Some of our people are feeling that because you're friends with Sean, you're being treated better. And because you're friends with Eric, you're being treated better, and people are still feeling it. And that's a really big struggle, because I think for everybody in our school, we all need to be. It's not about who you're friends with. It's not about who you're friends with. It's about the kids.
Right.
And it's about making things better in our school. And it's okay to feel that, how you're feeling, but what is your solution and how do we get there? And go to Sean is the start. And that's what I told the young lady today. You need to go to Sean, write it all down. And if you don't feel that that's working for you, then always speak. And so, I directed them to
Yeah,
go to
good.
Sean.
Perfect.
Look forward to meeting, talking. Yeah.
me do it, then
Yeah.
I'll come back to you.
I'm finding there's lots of remnants left over from that, a lot of perceptions. And we're finding a lot of that has been the modus operandi, and we're trying to change that. So
Yeah.
it's gonna take some time,
Well,
but I'm all ears.
the exact words I got today were, well, if you're friends with JS, then you got whatever.
Right,
And.
right.
I said, well, it's not about that. anymore.
No.
We're not doing that.
No,
anymore.
we're not doing that anymore.
We're trying to change the whole feeling of our school.
Yes.
We're trying to be a big team instead of individual teams.
Yes,
And so hopefully we
Yes.
can come to your top and I'll just. Like, I don't know.
another avenue that they could always use if they're a certified staff member is their union. You know, if they can go to their union president, classified.
Because
Yeah.
I think I asked her that,
Okay,
and she's classified.
okay,
And so if that was. my
Yeah,
direction,
yeah,
I'll
come
do
see
that.
me.
We'll get to complaints. But you basically impact the whole complaint slides
Sorry,
for me. No, that's okay. It's great. That's good.
that's what I learned last year.
Good. Okay. Anything else not working well? Still got some bumps in the road.
Well, we still have some people out there that are not happy and they're looking for problems to continue and names to tag on those problems. But I also see some cross talking where some of the people that were really unhappy the last kettle of fish that went down are questioning how hard people are getting after us about these things and if they really have something to go on rather than it is just coming out of their mouth. And that feels better to me. It feels like even though there are angry people out there that are still boiling the pot, that they're starting to settle down and to think about the impacts that they created on everybody the last time around.
Yeah. I was just working with the district. They superintendent, they were looking for a new principal at the high school. And there's an assistant principal that's really popular in the community and in the high school. They brought a bunch of people in. Our assistant principal was in the running, but they ended up failing the search. That they were just like nobody was the right fit for where the superintendent wanted to go, and the whole thing blew up in their face. And so, I mean, you know how this plays. There were lots of people making a lot of noise. The board was getting a lot of outreach on the subject. People were saying very hard things. But no one filed a complaint. There was no violation of statute or policy. And so there was nothing for the board to do. There was no board work there. Even though the community was just beating them up, they ended up having to just rally behind their superintendent, be strong as a leadership team, as a cohesive leadership unit, and push forward. And lo and behold, the way the story ends, at least for right now, is that it's quieted down. And they're doing another search. They got a search consultant, and they're doing it all over again. But they're just moving on. And so making sure that you're not getting distracted by the chatter. If there's a real problem, sometimes superintendents make mistakes, not often, but sometimes they do, then that's something that we got to address. And there are ways to do that. But if it's just noise, then you keep your eyes on those kids. Yeah,
I
man.
feel that's what we dealt with in March, February. Really, I felt that's what we dealt with, that we had such a community uproar over everything that was going on, that actually the same thing. We all have to take a step back.
Yep.
Well, that's where I'm frustrated is the community had all this to say and they were here all the time. And now that things changed, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, well, if you want to say, or you want to know what's going on, come to the board meetings.
Yep.
That's my deal,
And it's been that way for the 7 years that I've been here.
Yeah.
Until nobody liked what was going on, so nobody
Yeah. That's why I was here for the last 2 years, because I wanted stuff to change, and the only way to do that is to be here.
Well, I have to say that Sean is really on top of a lot of the stuff, and so he gets to it before we do, and so it makes life a lot easier for us most of the time, I think. That's what I experienced in the 3 months that I was the board chair.
Mhm.
I think one of the things I struggled with the last year that I want to make sure we move forward with in a way that's better. I felt like a lot of information went to the vice chair and the chair. And there was cherry picked what the rest of us got to know. I mean, and I will just say it to the point that we were told at these tables, you don't need to know that.
Mm.
And it felt like you're constantly running up this wall to get information. So we violate our own policies because we can't seem to get this information.
Right, okay.
And one thing that Sean has done is he has sent out a weekly correspondence to us,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously can be requested by the public because
Yep.
Sure.
because of that. But we don't just go out and hand it to the public. We say, good, we're in the loop. We don't come to this table surprised, or if somebody comes to us and they say,
Yeah.
hey, did you know the HR reset is starting? Yep, I did. You know,
There's
like,
a lot of superintendents do post their weekly messages.
so
Just throw it up on the website.
I think
Yeah, I thought
could.
about that.
I think that's one thing I want to make sure we don't fall into old habits. And I get that sometimes, you know, we might conference with Sean, but then making sure that gets into the updates for the entire board. I always have a million questions, so I tend to shoot those out, and Sean can always respond to it with the entire board on it if he wants
Mhm.
to, so that
Mhm.
they're updated. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's maybe what I'm struggling with the most. How do we make sure that we continue to break down the barriers between all of us, so we all have the same information and are prepared at this table, or when we get caught off guard out there?
Yeah, operational transparency, within the board. Hold on to that idea when we talk about role of the chair and leadership tomorrow. Yeah, because we have a whole set of slides on that. Maybe we'll take a set of, take a step back and maybe think about how you folks want to, what does the chair hold on to? What do they know? Okay, any other struggles before we get going? Okay, here we go. So this is, don't try to absorb this whole thing. There's a lot there. This is a timeline though of just a handpick of articles around the research connecting school boards to student outcomes. And you'll notice that, I mean, there has been research, even predating the 70s, looking at school boards. And the dominant narrative right up until into the 90s was that locally elected school boards were bad. They're politically unruly. They cause discontinuity, which is bad for kids. They're just difficult to manage. They're not good for school systems, for effective education systems. And there was a pretty strong movement to try to subsume school governance into city, typically municipal government. New York is a really good example where there's no locally elected school board. It's appointed by members of the school board or appointed by the mayor, and it exists within the municipal government. But in the late 1990s and early 2000s, there were the Lighthouse inquiries. It was done by the University of Iowa State. Is it? I think it's on here somewhere. It doesn't matter. And the whole idea was, if we apply training to school boards, will they change their behavior and practices? And does that have an impact on students?
Absolutely.
And that's what they found. Exactly. It's that, yes, indeed, school boards can learn and improve. You can professionalize a school board. And they did it once, and then they replicated it in 2 other states, and they found the same result, that there was definitely a connection between school governance and student outcomes. And since then, the research in this area has accelerated, and it's gotten much deeper. And so there's research on, behaviors associated with high performing boards that have positive impacts on student outcomes. And so on the column on the left, see if my laser works. It's there, but it's not on the screen. So on the left-hand column are those behaviors. Now, this is just a selection of articles, but setting the vision for what is possible for students. What is education going to look like in the Alsea School District is, one of the top ones. So setting clear expectations, creating that vision for what Alsea education looks like, and committing to the idea that every kid can succeed without exception. Climate and resources. This is really around culture, organizational culture. It's kind of what you're struggling with, is that previously you've had on toxic organizational culture and you're transitioning out of that. Deb, you were talking about how you're, saying directing people to the superintendent, empowering that person to connect with the superintendent, also empowering your superintendent to address that issue. Well, that's a culture piece, as well as navigating policy. Providing staff development, that's both organizationally and kind of what you were doing, as in your ombudsman role, and aligning and sustaining resources to do this, because professional development takes resources. Not every school district chooses to invest deeply in their staff. That's a choice you make. How much are you going to do that? Data and monitoring, holding the system accountable. That's how we do that. Prior to No Child Left Behind in 2009, we didn't have to look at data. And school districts didn't. We didn't look at the data, but it was required then that we look at our third, fourth, fifth. Am I going to get it right? Third, fourth, fifth reading, and it had to be disaggregated by race, ethnicity. It was required in the law. We had to look at it. It's the silver line. No, I didn't like No Child Left Behind as a policy, but that was a silver lining of that policy, is it forced us to look at our kids. Who are our kids? Where are they coming from? What are their needs? We do that using data, monitoring progress and using data to monitor that. And yeah, today, every school board needs to be data savvy. That is the public's expectation of you. Cohesive teaming, that's what you're doing right now. Cohesive teaming is just a snazzy way of working together as a leadership unit. This is the board and the superintendent meeting together and learning together. Yeah, and demonstrating commitment, practicing unified governance. Stakeholder and community engagement. You've been doing a bit of that lately, but that is going to be an ongoing role for you folks. There's a lot of broken trust in the public, so that's going to be work that you're going to need to be doing, and it's important work. And as the school board, you are uniquely equipped to do that. There are things that you can do and say that the superintendent and district staff cannot. And then policy and accountability. You govern through policy and focusing that's how you operationalize your will. So these are the behaviors associated with high performing boards, but there's another side to the coin. Oh, this is just a summary slide, but there's also research on low performing boards. What are those behaviors that negatively impact student outcomes? And you've all heard the saying, when the board makes a mistake that night, it's in classrooms the next day. This is what we're talking about. And so, yeah, less meetings that are less orderly. If we're not efficient with our time. Okay.
It was really bad.
I only watched the last few minutes before, so I didn't see but a couple.
I think
Something
it
I
was
never
for
wanna go
here.
back to.
I don't think it was for a lot of schools because of COVID.
I think
I
it
think
was,
it was worse.
we didn't throw any chairs in any superintendents, so that was good news. But I think it was disordered. It was chaos.
In my first 8 years, I don't believe I ever heard a swear word. I've never seen a staff member be yelled by a board member. It was just, you just didn't do that.
Well, you
It
should have
was
done that
just-
stuff.
things and. Yeah,
Believe me, it happens.
I know, but it shouldn't.
I
No.
completely agree. I completely
It
agree.
shouldn't.
Listen at the conference, there's been boards that have had way worse,
Yes.
way worse, and still do.
Ours was awful and it felt awful.
I believe it.
Yes.
I mean, I sat here and
Yeah.
cried, I don't know how many times.
Yeah.
Me
It was
too.
awful.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I was ready to go home.
I believe it.
I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this. This isn't why I'm here.
Mhm.
Let's not do that again.
No.
So yeah, I mean, and you will see yourselves, your past selves reflected in this somewhat. I mean, spending less time on student achievement. And I mean, they literally to study that, they have grad students with stopwatches and they watch videos of school boards and they time how much, how much time literally the board spends talking about kids or talking about guns or talking about, whatever. Pick the topic. I don't know what's making people angry today here right now, but
Non-transparency. That's what's making people angry.
okay.
They think we're not transparent in what we're doing.
Well, and you can work on that, but is that student achievement?
Well, it can be.
Can be related, but
Mhm.
yeah, so
I think where it becomes related is when the families need to know what we're deciding as a school board. What does the registration process look like? How do they get a hold of how to register their students? How,
yes.
that's where it impacts them. Whether we build these walls, not as much.
Members coming with their own axe to grind, poor relationships on the board, within the board, between the board and the superintendent, board and the community, all of those. Some individuals take up too much airtime. I'm guilty of that from time to time. Not focusing on policy, focusing on operations, all bad behaviors. Let's see, Derrickson O'Brien, only vaguely aware of school improvement initiatives. This is, it touches on informed oversight. We don't have an operational role as board members, but we do want to know how that curriculum is being deployed and is it being taught with fidelity, and how do we know? Is that professional development that we invested in helping with the deployment of that curriculum, that sort of thing? So that's informed oversight, being aware of school improvement initiatives. External profession, referring to external, but this is a whole bunch of making excuses. Referring to external pressures is the main reason for lack of student success. Blaming communication and outreach barriers. Describing teachers, students, and families as the cause of low performance. I mean, pick the narrative. I mean, it's the teachers. I mean, it's the teachers' unions, really. I mean, all they want is more money. I mean, if we could just rein in the teachers' union, then we get student achievement. Or you can have, what is it, students? Oh, well, these kids, look where they're coming from. I mean, this is a rural community, and they're not going to achieve. We just have to temper our expectations, right? Or let's see, oh, families, yeah. Well, it's the parents. If the parents would engage, well, then we would. If we had engaged parents, then we would have student achievement, right?
Oh, but not too engaged. Don't let them yell at us.
Right.
Mhm.
All excuses that we make to stop the conversation, about how do we achieve our goal of every child succeeding. And I'll confess, I used to be that guy. So when I worked at OSU, I did demographics. And so I remember sitting in a retreat with my own board saying these words: we need to keep in mind the socioeconomic background that our children are coming from. And it halted the conversation. It's like, no, poor kids can achieve. If you need an example, I can give you examples.
Right here. It's
Yeah.
the worst child ever. Moved out on my own at the age of 14. Went to
There-
college at 29. Changed my own life.
Now you have your own business.
Well,
Success.
Yeah.
So yes, there are things that you can do that will negatively impact children. What you do matters. Okay, so that's just a summary slide. I still teach 5 roles of the board. This is Mary Della Gardell from Iowa, Iowa State, Iowa State. Anyway, this is from way back when, 2009, even back in the 90s. She was the grad student of Tom Alsbury and the 5 roles of the board. That's how I learned board work, and I still like it. You know, the first one is really simple. What you're doing right now, that you as a leadership team are a PLC, and that's a borrowed term from the teaching profession, stands for professional learning community, where you have grade level teachers working together for their own professional growth and to coordinate their instruction with kids. Next one is setting clear expectations. And then we do that through policy and our planning work. What do we expect for, for the district? I like to think of board work kind of like gardening or farming, since I'm in a farming community. We till up the land and then we plant some seeds, or get the weeds out, then we plant seeds, water, and hopefully we get a harvest at the end of the season. Well, board work is kind of like that as well. I mean, it takes time for these efforts to pay off. Going back to the example of a curriculum adoption, you're going to spend a whole ton of money on a curriculum that your staff identify as the best that they can find. You're going to deploy it. You're going to have professional development to skill up your people to get it out there. And in the first year, you may see a drop in student scores because the teachers are still learning that new curriculum. But in the following year, hopefully you see a reversal and things start climbing. And you'd see that return. So it may take 2 or 3 years to see the full impact of that curriculum adoption. So you almost have to think like a tree farmer. You have to think kind of in longer terms than your average, I would say, politician. So building the conditions for success, making sure that we're getting the right resources in place so that it's going to pay off down the road. Maybe you won't even be in office when you see success. And holding
Can we go back to that example just really
yeah,
quick?
you bet.
So when you look at curriculum adoption, there are times I feel like I don't know the right questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking for student outcome, right? So we're looking for what's the data behind that curriculum that shows student improvement? Is that? and
Yeah.
Do we expect our teachers, our superintendent, or who do we expect to even have the answer for that?
Yeah, it would be well, and I'll defer to the superintendent.
I would suggest a couple of things. The board wants to know, number one, is the curriculum on the state approved list? Because the state always puts out a list of approved curriculums that they feel aligns with current state and national standards, particularly the Common Core state standards. And usually that's a list that we go through and we select from. And, you can go with any curriculum, but what is going to fit best for your school and your culture? Like one of the discussions we've had is we really want to be thinking about really emphasizing our CTE programs or vocational programs and the application of mathematics, English, all those sorts of things, and as it pertains to forestry and automotive, and that's why we're building the CTE center, the vocational center. So you'll be asking yourself the question, gee, is this going to fit with our kids? A curriculum that may fit better with an advanced academic type high school, it's going to look different than the curriculum that may fit with a school that has a different type of emphasis. So that's one thing you have to look at. 2 is you want to make sure that the teachers have had a chance to thoroughly go through and vet the curriculum. Have they tried the curriculum in the classroom? How did the lessons work for them? Was it resources they need so they can focus simply on teaching rather than writing curriculum? That's a current problem we have right now is teachers, because the curriculum is kind of in disarray, they're writing their own curriculum. And I keep telling them, stop. We don't want you writing curriculum. That's not your job description. Your job description is to teach the curriculum the board and the district approves for you to teach. But you want to have teacher buy-in because they're the ones in the classroom in the nitty-gritty. And And so that's also an important factor to look at. So, does it meet the standards? Another question you might want to ask is, gee, what kind of supplementary materials do you need to provide with this curriculum? Because I guarantee you, every curriculum you choose is not going to be a complete 100% package, comprehensive package. There's always going to be some supplementation that teachers are going to have to do. And you always want to minimize that supplementation because you don't want teachers out there searching for hours for supplementary material when they really need to be focused on how am I going to teach this lesson to these kids.
Mhm.
So that's another question you can be asking of the staff. So I don't think you as a board need to worry about the very basic part of the education. Rely upon the staff to tell you those things. Rely upon the teachers, the principals, superintendent to talk about the process we went through to vet it. And also we want the board to look at it more of at the 10,000 foot level and to say, okay, let's give this a try. And like you said, you may not see the results in the first year because there's a learning curve with using
There is.
curriculum and resources. It takes a while for the teachers to really get on board with, okay, how is this presenting material? How am I passing this kid from second grade to third grade and interacting with what's being taught between both grades? We're going from algebra 1 to geometry, or, what do the transitions look like? Sometimes teachers have to do what is called crosswalk exercises, where you're saying, okay, I'm here, you're there, but what do we have to do to make a smooth transition for these kids to make sure that one is working with the next? The other thing with curriculum, I could go on forever, is you rarely buy into a K through 12 curriculum. It's usually an elementary curriculum, middle school curriculum, high school curriculum. So how are the crosswalks designed between those two different sets of curriculums? Because one curriculum is going to emphasize one thing, the other curriculum is going to emphasize something different. So what kind of discussions have the staff had with that? What are their plans on how to go from one series to the next, one company to the next? So those are all ideas.
So when the board votes to adopt or not adopt a curriculum, is the expectation that the teachers have already used it have used it a little bit?
My expectation will be that they have.
Okay,
They've tried some sample lessons.
okay.
Mhm.
And
In the classroom.
and they should be able to tell you what that looks like, how it
Yeah.
worked, what worked well,
What
what
worked,
didn't.
what didn't?
So when that comes onto the agenda, just for example, so it comes onto the agenda, it's K through 5. We can essentially say, hey, it's on the agenda. Mr. Gallagher, please provide us this feedback prior to the meeting so we understand how the teachers, are using it.
Sure.
Or because it feels like we're putting everybody on the spot in the board meeting to ask that, or are we asking for teachers to be
Oh,
there?
yeah.
I would do a work session and I
Yeah.
would bring lead teachers to
Awesome.
present it.
Okay,
And so we would have a comprehensive discussion.
And this is a long process. I mean,
Yes.
it takes about a year probably, I would,
Mhm.
on average. So at the beginning of the year, say in September, October, superintendent's going to come and say, we're going to do it. It's a
Mhm.
new science adoption.
Mhm.
We're going out.
Mhm.
And you go, okay.
Mhm.
And they go out and they go shopping.
Mhm.
They're going to bring it back. They'll start testing it, looking at it. You might get an intermediate report. Well, we're down to 3, these 3. This is what we're looking
Mhm.
like. This is how we're going to proceed. And then they'll come back a few months later with a decision. And that's where you get into that work session. They're going to let you look at the curriculum materials. The public gets to look at the
Yes.
curriculum materials.
so
Yes.
that's
a-
exactly what I feel like we need as a community, as a school.
Yes.
It's not something we were voting blind, to be
No.
totally fair. We've always voted blind on curriculum.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we upset the teachers, not emotionally upset them, but upset their classroom and the student success
Mhm.
because that was thrown to them at the
Mhm.
same time that essentially the next day that we voted.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
like they were getting new curriculum a couple times a year
Mhm.
because, hey, the board approved this, so go use it. I mean,
oh,
so
okay.
Right.
that's
right.
why I asked that question is what
Right.
does that process look like for adopting something like that? And I think
Right.
that's something I'm interested in learning more of, where there are special caveats in adopting things within the school.
Right.
Which sounds like you can teach us a little bit of
Yes.
that too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now,
the school board has the authority to approve curriculum, but your role in that is process oversight,
yes,
to say that
absolutely.
in a succinct way.
Rely upon the staff to advise you in terms of how it's working in the classroom. Is it meeting state standards?
And that makes total sense because if you can vote in the district and you draw breath, you can be on a school board. There's no expectation that any of us have any expertise in pedagogy. So we want to rely on our professionals to advise us in that.
Now, to give you an update where we're at with curriculum, since we're on this, when I first arrived in March, he was like, oh no. We have some working curriculum in math at the elementary, but our curriculum at the secondary is not working at all. And so I immediately put Lori Greenfield on it and I said, let's go out and find some curriculum for math. And it was also an adoption year for English language arts, which nobody had started anything. Like you said, it's a year-long process. It should have started way last fall. So Lori has also been working with the staff to look at a K-12 language arts adoption. Now we're not done yet. We're starting to narrow it down. I'm going to be reconvening the team. I'll probably get directly involved and make sure we have buy-in. We look at crosswalk activities, things of that nature before we bring anything like that to the board. And my typical modus operandi is do work session and where we bring the team and the board and they talk about, they want to present the curriculum. This is what we're seeing and here's why, and here's why we feel this is the best option. And
To me, that we've had disengagement all the way around between the teachers and the board and everybody. And we'd have a staff member in the elementary and maybe in the high school that would go through the curriculum and say, oh, this is really good, present it to the board and say, we want to do this. And we kind of go, yeah, we should do that. And the teachers haven't been fully engaged.
correct,
And so
Yeah.
we've got
correct.
a lot of past history chaos that we need to get through. And we're really working hard to get there, but it's a long
Yeah, it's a
it-
process.
process.
It's a process. It just takes time.
And speaking of engagement, if this is operational, so it's not something I have something to really have an opinion on, but I would love to see where that engagement doesn't require the teacher to reach out for the engagement, but that the engagement is brought to them.
Mhm.
So we include them in that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And curriculum is one of those things to a teacher that is very sensitive. It's their pride and joy.
Yeah.
It affects their daily life and the ability for them to be able to be successful at their job. And there's a lot of passion there. And so it's very important as school administrators and leaders that we lead to as much consensus as we can. I've never seen a curriculum adoption where everybody 100% is on board, but there are those that may not be on board and say, yeah, I can work with that. That's what you want to see.
Right.
You want to work together as a team and say, okay, if we adopt this as a team, yeah, Susie, you may not like that well, but can you live with it? Yes, Mr. Gallagher, I can live with that. And you expect them to all implement it once the board has approved that.
Don't you think that because we haven't had that strong of a leadership, that's why we have people writing their own curriculum?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
yeah, they're doing it out of desperation.
It's in a vacuum.
Yes,
Hopefully that frees them up some time, right?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Poor
Don't
people.
go home and write
Yeah,
curriculum.
don't write your own curriculum.
I
No.
digress. Thank you for that.
No,
Good
that's
discussion.
why we do this.
Yep.
Holding the system accountable. So tomorrow night we'll talk about superintendent evaluation. That's one of the key ways that we
Yep.
hold the system accountable.
Yep.
But I have pictures of data here. So we're going to track student achievement, track district operations, and the board and superintendent work together to identify what are those key indicators that the board is going to track, because there's a lot of data out there.
Mhm,
You can't see it all. Your superintendent's going to see a lot more data
mhm.
than the board will. So what are those key measures that you're going to follow? And you come to consensus on that. And his evaluation will be tied to it. And you might even evaluate yourselves or hold yourselves accountable to that data. And
really, if I might add, the accountability from the board and the superintendent comes in terms of a lot of its resource allocations. If
yes,
this is our goal to increase the graduation rate by 30%, what are we doing to provide resources for the staff to be able to do their job appropriately, to be able to increase that graduation rate? What are they needing? What are we approving at the district level, at the board level? That's where the accountability comes in.
and what are we willing to abandon?
Yeah, and what are we willing to abandon
To get that
to make
done.
the sacrifice?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Creating public will to succeed. This is your role out in the community, celebrating the success of the district. Just being out there, sharing the stories of what's going on. If you're knee deep in data all the time and being engaged with your teachers, curriculum adoption is a great example where you can talk about, oh, we have this new reading adoption and it's so cool. It's the most current science. It's really great. It's going to really transform the way education is going to happen in our primary school. That's a great narrative to share in the public, building public will to succeed. Celebrate the good stuff that's happening in your district. And if there are challenging things, embrace those too, but while protecting the institution, the board, and the district. So I made a note to myself because I need to bring this document to you tomorrow night. The focus framework. I love this document because it's a really powerful tool for helping the board stay in lane. Pick a thorny topic, any topic.
Menstrual Dignity Act.
Yeah. Okay. So this is how we use this tool. Area being done, Menstrual Dignity Act, and how we're going to implement. It's a hot topic right now. Okay. So learning together as a team. What information does the board need to ensure the right decisions are made? What does the board need to know about this policy?
Information.
Yeah.
Limitations.
Yeah. What's the policy landscape? Is there a policy on that? Is it just the law? You know, okay, so, but you're going to need to get grounded on what's going on. What's the landscape? What are your greatest hopes for the district in this area? That's a discussion that only you board members can have. You may have staff support you in that. You may have the community support you in that conversation, but it's a conversation you five have to have and come to some sort of alignment about what are your expectations. You may not all vote, you may not be uniform in your decision, but you need to be unified, particularly on a topic like this one. Create conditions for success. What are you going to do to support it? What are resource allocations need to happen to implement this policy, or if in this case, because we have to, it's the law. So what do you have to do? What community outreach? Well, I'm getting ahead. Well, this is what will we accept as evidence of progress? How are you going to ensure that it's being done appropriately and effectively? And then what will we need to do to gain community support for this work? How are you going to engage and talk to the community about this topic? That's tough. That'd be tough for you folks up here, I bet.
I haven't even read that new policy or law that's come out yet. I need to do that.
It's pretty simple. You know,
I saw it.
feminine hygiene products in all bathrooms. That's it. It's pretty much
That's it.
the sum total of it. That's
But
it.
I think the implementation, and I'm going to be putting one of the administrators on this by tomorrow, is what are the lessons that the state is recommending? I would like for us to reach to ODE and say, okay, you've got to have some expertise in this. This is coming from the state level. What should we be presenting? And then also giving parents options, like you said. I don't want my child part of that. And so, okay, that's fine. You know, but still understanding their child is still going to see the menstrual products in the bathrooms. You know,
And so that's part of your expectations. What are your expectations for kids? So you can see how, and at no time in any of this were we talking about operations. That was all board work. And if you keep your attention in these 5 channels, you'll always be doing board work, no matter what the topic is.
I think this should be ahead of our board work and all time.
Oh, it's in the handout. Good for
Yeah,
me.
You don't have to bring it.
I don't have to bring it. I love the focus framework. It's a really nice tool
I should paste it on
because it
this
just
and
gives
do
us,
it.
because it's so easy when emotions are running high and we're getting distracted, you can come back to this and say, okay, time out. You know, what do we really need to do? And it's a blessing for your superintendent because he knows you're not going to go out of lane. And he's going to get some clear direction on what the board wants to do. Yes. Okay. 5 members. Yeah. 5 roles of the board. Good stuff. I'll teach it until I'm done. Love it. Okay. So governance theory. So there's really two sides of the house. There's the governance world, which is the school board, and management, which is the superintendent. And this is analogous to city councils, county commissions, unless the county commission also is the administrative body for the county. There are some, Benton County, it used to be that way. They didn't have a county administrator, so they had those administrative functions. Now they don't. They have a county administrator, so they fit into this model. And it's really about what needs to get done versus how, or the ends versus the means. You know, you say what's going to happen. We're going to ensure that we're going to be compliant with statute, ensure that there's feminine hygiene products in all bathrooms. Go do it. Figure it out. Yep. That's what it's all about. So this is a pretty high contrast slide. So on up in the board, you know, we've talked about what you're supposed to be doing. You're working on goals. You remember that long range goal. You're setting that vision in your community. You're advocating for your schools. You're adopting policies. And then the superintendent, he's doing the operations and the regulations and hiring personnel and making things happen. Now I got these red arrows on the slide. This is a pretty stark. I mean, there's a line there, right? These are two separate roles. Very, very, this is high contrast on purpose. But what are those red arrows for?
Do they merge into regulation, the policy, the
What about roles?
Well, the superintendent has to go back to the board for operational approvals, right?
Yeah, that's part of it.
And then, so kind of one of my things that I'm stuck on right now is personnel. So he hires them and he has a hiring committee. Should or could one of the board members be on the hiring committee?
Oh, that's a great question.
Well, because, so just for instance, say we hire somebody that has a questionable background and he knows about it. I know nothing about it. And he hires him. Somebody calls me and said, oh my gosh, did you see this guy? He was in jail. Just making a story up. And I go, no, I don't know anything about it. Hold on. And then I call her and then I call him and I'm like, what's this all about? So should or could a board member be a part of the hiring process?
So there are some districts in Oregon, typically smaller districts like Alsea, where board members sit on hiring committees. And I will confess, I've sat on a hiring committee as well early in my tenure on the Corvallis board. My recommendation is against board members sitting on hiring committees. I'm going to go back to what I told you earlier. There's no expectation that anyone on a school board has expertise in pedagogy, school administration, or even school governance. I have no formal training in education. I don't know anything. And I had no business being on a hiring committee for an assistant superintendent. Because I don't know what the criteria are. I mean, I could spitball it and figure it out, but I'm not a school administrator. So I shouldn't be on that hiring committee. There's another aspect to this, and it's the social aspect, is that school board members, we never get to take our hat off. No matter where we are always seen as a member of the school board. And so what you say has a greater weight. Even though you may have a really strong relationship with your staff, and at the time I did. But what I said definitely had more weight. That's true when if we're doing a session with the community, like a listening session or something like that, what you say in that meeting with the community can also influence what members of the public will say, or even just your presence being there. You don't have to open your mouth, just being in the room can change the tone. And so we just always have to be really careful about where we show up. So I would recommend against it. Let your professionals do the hiring.
So I have a question when it comes to that. When a board member sits on a hiring panel, it's inserting them into the operational function
Correct.
of the school,
Correct.
correct? So they aren't looking at it of, am I following the process and the procedure that needs to happen? They're actually looking at it as, will this personnel work with the school? Do they have the education and things like that? But as a board, we're not voting that those things are check marked. We're voting that the process was followed, that the credentials were checked, that they had the appropriate panel size, that maybe the board states need to have 3 candidates to be able to pick one. I mean,
Sure,
that's
whatever.
that,
Mhm.
that's that difference. So am I making it more? I guess if I sit on an interview panel, I'm now a part of the operation, so I'm supposed to separate that out when I sit in this seat.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Because
agree.
because then when I vote
You're
on
out
it,
of lane.
when
I
I vote
agree.
on it, I'm not supposed to be considering the operational standard of candidate A versus candidate B. I'm only supposed to be voting on, did we follow the process for candidate A and candidate B?
Check.
Here's the-
And I suppose if you sat on the committee in an oversight capacity and didn't open your mouth, that could probably be okay. We do that in labor negotiations. So board members will sit in on labor negotiations. And I do advocate for that. Because it is the expectations of the board that it, and pretty direct expectations. So you will set budget parameters. So I'm sure that the superintendent's going to come back to you in the fall when he starts thinking about roll-ups, when he goes out to his administrators and saying, okay, we got to start building a budget. He's going to ask the board for budget parameters and guide you through that process. And so you have a direct role in the budget process. So having a representative of the board in labor negotiations kind of makes sense. Also, for board members, there is no substitute for sitting nose to nose with your staff in a closed negotiations. It's just,
You know, I've always looked at that is in the board's lane, is the negotiations process.
yeah. But we shouldn't open our mouth in the negotiation. You'll caucus with the district team, and you can participate in that. But it's your superintendent's responsibility for negotiating, doing the negotiating piece.
So back to the hire, sorry, I want to go back to this. I think it's been a big topic for us as a board to try to understand the hiring process and where did this position come from? Why was it needed? And so
Hmm,
I really wonder when I look at voting on that process, it would be nice to hear, hey, we're making a suggestion to hire candidate A for this position. We had 3 personnel interviewed, all met the qualifications for TSPC licensure. Candidate A had 10 years of experience versus candidate B and C had less than 10 years of experience, and keeping it objective that way that I can go, they followed the process, they had the same equal panel, they had this and this and this. That to me is enough information for me to go back to the community and say, community, I'm sorry you don't love that our decision was this, but here's what we did. The superintendent had 3 candidates, this and this and this. The candidate selected was ranked above all due to these objective factors.
I would say that I would say
Well-
the board wouldn't even have that involvement. It wouldn't routinely have that involvement unless there was a complaint.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because even down in Corvallis, there's no way the board could have that level of involvement.
Correct.
I don't want to have to check in on every hiring process. Right. A staff of
I
600
don't want to check
people.
in on them either.
So
Yeah,
there
I
is,
know.
one of the things we're updating, as you guys know, is the faculty handbook. And in that is going to be the HR components. And one of the components is the hiring process of how we do this. And I've kind of outlined it for you already in weekly notes or a letter, or I can't remember. We talked about it briefly, but that'll be more fully fleshed out. So you know what the process is. You know that we've gone through these checks and balances. But also there's a criteria. It's not necessarily the number of years of experience.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there is a criteria that we use, a matrix that we use to go through and rate. And also keep in mind that the interview committee doesn't see everything. They don't see the reference checks.
No.
They don't see the background checks. They don't have those side conversations of, oh, gee, you were arrested at one point. What happened there? That's not interview committee material to begin with. So you're not going to be exposed to that. But when you see the process involved and knowing that that is the type of stuff that we have to screen at the district level, we have to look at licensure. have to look at background checks. We have to look at reference checks. We have to look at, make sure the process was followed by the hiring manager, which is usually the immediate supervisor. You know, it could be your transportation director, it could be your high school principal, or, you know, they're the hiring manager and they're required to go through certain steps before it ends up on my plate. And then I get a chance at it and to make sure we double check everything, dot our i's and cross our t's before we bring a candidate forward.
And that's never been the process here. It's always been, oh, you look good, let's do that.
I know.
So how does the board set its expectations for hiring?
Well, we haven't set expectations. We've always left it to the superintendent.
think
I
we-
bet there are.
I-
You have, you just don't realize you have. Because he's created a process. And what did you use to ground that process?
Board policy, state law.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have policies on hiring processes.
Yeah.
That's how we operationalize our governance is through policy.
Yeah.
Well,
So I
let's-
knew what his answer was gonna be.
Let's put it this way. That's the way we're doing it now.
Yep.
Yes.
No, I'm not critiquing. I'm just, it's a
Yeah.
teachable moment. I want to
Yeah,
grab onto it.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to go back to my red
Sorry.
arrows.
Okay,
So why are those red arrows there? Why can the superintendent muddle around in the board stuff, but it doesn't work the other way?
Because it's a hot mess.
No, it isn't about, this is assuming a perfect environment.
Oh, okay. No, but when the board does, no, I'm just kidding.
I think it's because that's kind of his role is to inform.
Advise.
Yep, you get a cookie.
Yes, because I'm starving. Oh.
If you
We're
guys
gonna
want,
eat today?
you guys can eat. Yeah,
You wanna
if you
break
want.
for meals?
So Deb is exactly right.
No.
So Deb is exactly right. The board's advisor, chief advisor is the superintendent. I mean, he is how you operationalize everything. A board without a superintendent is like King Arthur without Excalibur. It's like you're just a group of angry people because you can't get anything done.
Hey, we did that.
Yeah, and so, yeah, he's there to support you, and that's what those arrows represent, is the superintendent's support of the board. Okay, but when things get tough, the lines aren't always clear. You know, when we have lots of
Okay,
controversy.
somebody else has to eat. again.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, go get something to eat, and then we'll talk about cruise ships.
Or water.
And someone said there was, are there cookies there?
Try some of this lasagna.
White.
You-
Alfredo.
you know, you said-
Mhm.
Where we're talking,
I don't put that in my fridge 'cause I think they'll-
It's shrimp and crab
Have some.
lasagna with
Oh my
white
God.
sauce.
I will definitely take some home.
Terrible.
No.
They don't make.
I was hoping nobody was allergic to
That's exactly
seafood.
what I
so-
What do you want? for
That
dinner?
would-
I don't gotta see if I'm on jury
I
duty
don't
tomorrow.
care. It's
Oh,
not-
no.
Oh, you just don't check in.
I'll do it.
I haven't been pulled for jury duty in a while. Knock on wood. I probably just cursed myself.
That's good.
Yeah, I
Good. Put that one right there. We're just gonna cut this so you can use the knife on the bread.
You know your number?
Yeah, I got that handy.
Jurors number 11, 27, 48.
Good, go ahead. Thank you.
Touch the bread all over that. I use the cracker. And steak 5 minutes. How do you feel?
Okay. You're gonna probably.
We're not eating.
I'm not hungry right now. I'm on run all.
I've been running with this all day.
Yeah.
You already eaten the seed?
No, I just have been, my day,
Very stressful.
well, Marcus was home, which is fine, like, it is what it is. But then the internet went out, and then I was trying to figure out, like, where am I gonna go work? It wasn't like I could just scratch my
You
day.
have a hot spot
Doesn't work at home.
at the restaurant.
Oh,
I had
well,
other people come to the
I do
restaurant and
have a
say,
hot spot, but then
Dad,
I had.
can I go to the back room? I need a hot spot. And I'm like, go ahead.
I know, but then I had a toddler with me. It worked out fine because I ended up at Gina's house.
Those power lines. Oh,
You say you come to the restaurant, and I
Wow.
can put Marcus to work.
He'd do it too.
He would love hanging out at the restaurant.
That is really good.
Isn't that yummy?
Mhm.
So I had bought crab for seafood Benedict. And I never got to it, so then this came about and I'm like, I'm gonna use the crab. So it's crab and shrimp.
this is good.
Mm.
My wife and I went to Newport on Saturday. And I'd forgotten how good fresh seafood can be. Boy, it was good.
Not have jury duty tomorrow. I was like, I didn't cancel any of my meetings for tomorrow. I was like, so they're gonna screw me, or I'm gonna be just fine.
Be punching.
Noodle.
Oh, the outside.
Mhm.
And I pre-cooked those yesterday, just not completely, so they would finish cooking without being soggy.
Mhm.
Do you ever do crock pot lasagna? I know you don't do red sauce, but have you ever done crock pot lasagna?
Mhm.
My gosh, it's my very favorite and it's the easiest thing in the world.
Really?
Really?
You put you actually use uncooked noodles. You could use white sauce for it. It
Mhm.
wouldn't be that big of a deal. You do all your layering, you set it on low for the entire day and it's done and it's soft and it's easy.
Really?
Seriously, it's the best thing ever.
Really?
I did it for one of our 4-H nights one time when we had the kids out at the county fair. Just
Mhm.
plugged it into the camp trailer. Cooked it
And
all day
low.
long.
You just put it
Just
on
put it on
low.
Huh.
I'll be
Try
darned.
that.
I use
I'm-
I use my own tomato sauce, but that's what I prefer. But then
Yeah,
you can
sure.
use ricotta, not use ricotta, use spinach, not use spinach, whatever your preference is. And then I just use hardened crunchy noodles. I don't pre-cook them. Layer everything in there.
I'm so gonna do that. I love
Yeah.
Robinson Bot. Okay, I know this is beating a dead horse, but because you guys get it, but okay, so think of your district as a ship, right? So management is your superintendent in charge of that. He's the captain of the ship, right? He's in charge of, the steering of the ship and engineering to make it go, all the custodians, so all the people to keep all the staterooms clean. He's in charge of food service from the little cafe in the bow to the big restaurant to the disco deck on the stern. He's in charge of all of that. The board commissions the journey. You say, Captain Gallagher, take us to the island of Student Success Paradise. Oh, and we have a couple islands we want to stop at too along the way. Those are intermediate goals to get you there. So you're the one, so superintendent handles all the operations. You're the ones that are looking to the horizon. We want to go over there. So I want to share this idea. You guys are starting to think about this. You're talking in these terms now. So collaborative governance, this is our definition. my team at OSBA, we actually created this definition. Collaborative governance is an approach that utilizes effective partnerships to learn and lead together in an environment of trust and respect, with shared focus on high expectations for all students through collective responsibility, accountability, and support. So there's a lot there, and I color coded this on for a reason, because I wanted to pull those key ideas out of there. And so I created this diagram to go along with it. Ooh. So it starts with effective partnerships, and this is really about relationships within the board, between board members, between the board and the superintendent, board and the community. And you've heard me talk about those relationships in several communities. You need effective partnerships, to do this work. The next piece is shared focus. This is getting those shared goals, language, and metrics. This is really your strategic planning piece, having, board priorities, district priorities that the board is the steward of. So that's where, it's from the boardroom to the classroom. Everybody's clear on what we're doing around student achievement, student wellness, or pick your buckets, but those are two of the popular ones right now. And shared metrics. How are you going to track progress? So shared focus. The next is collective responsibility, that we are all sharing in this. Because when you start talking about we all own the goals, and we all own we're using the same language, we start all working together, and we hold each other accountable. Teachers will hold you accountable, and vice versa. And it's a cohesive unit. And then the virtuous cycle of accountability. And then this last piece is organizational reliability. Is really just a snazzy way of saying trust, that you're building trust within the institution. So we want to build that mutual respect and trust. We want elevated board efficacy. Your board, you already sense your increasing efficacy as a governing unit. And ultimately, that's going to result in improved student outcomes. Now, the way this is drawn, that's a linear process. It just goes down, right? Well, the way that this is actually a cycle, that we do this through engagement. So processes like curriculum adoptions would be an engagement process. You're engaging your staff in a ministerial process of the board. It's crucially important to the district. Superintendent evaluation would be another engagement process, where you're engaging your administrator in a structured way to talk about your expectations and his expectations too, about what you want to have happen in the district. And you can also do this with the public. I would say the public comment is not the best tool for that. So you'd want to think of other ways to do that. And that's kind of what they were talking about Steve Constantino and what he was thinking about. I don't think there's a district in Oregon that is really satisfied with community engagement right now. Everybody is trying to get it figured out. Does this kind of make sense? Where you want to go? Because this is where the magic happens. Because if you can get this whole idea of collaborative governance going on, that means you can tackle really big issues. And, groups of kids that are struggling, and then hone in on where your problems are and face those problems without blaming, and start working towards improvement.
And I think that is a really important thing for all of us. And I think that is something that we've been working on. I think since Ryan and Robert joined the board, I think that's something that we've really focused on.
I think I'll speak for myself. I am starting to learn the roles of the board in a better capacity, that I can hear the community and knowledgeably and comfortably say, this is where I want you to take this. This is where I need you to go with this. And if you're not satisfied, by all means, keep escalating up until you become satisfied or it becomes to the board. But being able to share what our responsibility is with the community and helps them to also understand what our role is.
Yep. And that's a community engagement piece, where that's that closing the loop, that they understand what your role is.
I just think all of us are really looking at doing this.
I think you're right.
I would agree.
This is more governance theory. We've really talked about this. This is really I use the hiring committee as an example here, but really in that informed oversight, talking about curriculum deployment and is it being done with fidelity and understanding how improvements are progressing. So on one side, we have micromanaging. This is balanced governance continuum, posited by Tom Alsbury. He has a whole set of standards, based on seeking balance. So on one side, we have the micromanaging board. The other side, we have a disengaged rubber stamp board that doesn't pay any attention. I think my understanding is that the previous iteration of this board was forced into a rubber stamp sort of disengaged situation.
I would say we went back and forth. That would be my opinion. I'll just, I'm totally a micromanager because it's constantly grasping for what's going on.
Mhm.
That was my comfort level, was to go to that side of the house versus the
Oh.
other side of the house.
So oscillating from one pole to the other, even more dysfunctional. That's terrible.
Look at how great we are today compared to where we were.
Yeah, you're definitely moving into the green zone here in the middle where, you're thinking about, informed oversight. We want to have informed oversight. I have no doubt that this board will move towards strategic planning soon, because it's where you guys are naturally headed in that direction. Yeah, and focusing on an instruction and learning focus, not getting to the nuts and bolts of how we're managing that, and not going, oh, well, if most of the kids are doing okay, then it's fine. We want to be, how is it happening? What does instruction look like in the classroom? Can we visit a school? That's where you want to be. So what does collaborative governance look like on the hoof? Effective superintendent evaluation, fostering that relationship. The most powerful tool that you have for building a relationship with your superintendent is the evaluation process. Strategic priorities with district-wide leadership team. District-wide leadership team is a technical term. It's when the board meets with key staff to inform the board on a topic that's significant. Could be a curriculum adoption, or it could be strategic planning. And there's lots of different times when staff are going to come alongside the board. So they'll be in the boardroom working with you, probably in a work session, to inform you on the work that you're doing. So setting strategic priorities. So that would be that strategic planning piece. Transformational policy development. Adopting policies that fundamentally change how the system works. It's ultimately where you want to go. Working on a strategic initiative, maybe it's mental health or career and technical education, classroom technology, whatever it is, where you're allocating a significant amount of resources, both in revenue and in time, on something that's really important. And you're bringing everybody to the table to support the board in that process. And I've added inclusive budget process. The current way, the way the budget process looks like in local budgeting from Oregon. I don't know, were you in the budget? Were you in the finance one too?
No.
Where I editorialized a little bit about the budget process, that it's kind of an anachronism from pre Measure 5 and Measure 50, when the budget committee, when the preponderance of funding came from local sources. Post Measure 5 and Measure 50, most funding, the bulk of funding, comes from the state. And so funding levels are really set for us. So then what's the purpose of having a budget committee? And it begs the question. And so, and we have heard more and more people saying, well, I want to have input on the budget process. But when we have the hearings, that happens at the budget committee and when the board approves the budget. Well, the train has left the station. It left months ago. by that time. I mean, the superintendent will start roll-ups in the fall, October, November, something like that. We'll start building a budget around that time. That's when we want to have, public input on the budget process, if they're going to have meaningful input. So that's what I mean by inclusive budget process. So that's something where the board is going to collaborate with the superintendent on how to operationalize what does an inclusive budget process look like in Elsie. That's a really interesting question. Maybe you guys take that up. Oh, laundry list. Again, beating the dead horse here. So board hires the superintendent hires staff, board approves contract, you are the local contract authority. Superintendent is involved in, does employee relations. You do ratify contracts though with your associations. The board sets the vision and goals for the district. Superintendent turns it into action. He's the captain of the ship.
Go back to approved contract.
Oh,
I was gonna ask when he was all done, if we could do that.
yeah.
Flush that out.
I was talking about labor, but so, and then there's also a threshold where there are contracts that the district can enter into without the board approving them. What's the threshold for Elsie? Is it 150? What is the threshold for
75,000.
oh, okay. So anything less than 75,000, the district can enter into that contract without the board's approval. And that makes sense. You do not want to be approving contracts for custodial supplies or copier maintenance. It's
No.
it's not important.
So what
Is
if,
it-
oh,
No,
I'm
you go
sorry.
first. No.
So what if, say, yeah, nobody in particular, what if Sean has agreed to hire somebody at a higher wage that we're more comfortable with? So say he hires a principal at 140,000 for a year, we're looking at it like, gosh, that's a lot of money, why so much?
Well, the wage range will be set,
Mhm,
so he's fixed by that.
by the board.
So do we see that? I've never.
He's
seen that.
getting there.
I'm
Mhm.
getting
That's
there.
what the HR thing is,
Yeah.
to get the range for the,
Yes.
So the
We're
board
redoing
approves.
those right now.
Oh,
that's
okay.
why there's been no contracts, because there's no set wages for what their description of jobs are.
All we
But
have
didn't
is
we
what,
just hire with contracts people?
I don't think we
well,
We've
set-
hired, but we've not seen a contract.
Well,
haven't
that's,
approved the contract.
Yeah.
I thought we,
Well, that's why I'm asking to flesh this out. So
Maybe we all
I'm-
have
I'm-
an entirely different understanding.
I'm afraid we
Yes.
do.
yeah,
I am working off of salary schedules that were in existence when I first arrived here, assuming they've been board approved. And that's what I've been hiring at. Do these contracts need, or do these salary schedules need to be updated? Yes. The salary schedule for the teaching staff will come through negotiations with the union.
right.
The classified salary schedule, we've already done some initial comparison data. And I can tell you right now, we have to increase it to be competitive.
So can you explain the difference to me in classified and unclassified?
Classified are hourly wage
Okay,
people that are, that they're subject to overtime, according to BOLI laws. Certified are
Unclassified.
they have to be certified through Teacher Standards Practices Commission.
Okay,
And their salary schedule is based upon more of just a salary rather than hourly.
okay,
But still in their collective bargaining agreement, they say here are the working hours we're agreeing to. So I
okay,
can't require a teacher to be at 5 in the morning and leave at midnight every night,
right, okay, I just wanted to put in my mind, because
Yeah.
nobody's ever explained that to me.
Yeah.
And so. that
Yeah.
helps.
As I'm thinking about this with that salary schedule, and he said, oh, you've approved the salary schedule, and I'm thinking, no. I would love to see moving forward, when we approve salary changes, we see the entire impact. The entire salary, not this position salary change, but what does that do to that entire level of admin or teachers, or
mhm.
I think that's
Mhm.
a full picture.
Oh,
When we go to
yes.
approve
Yes.
something, we need to see the full picture,
Mhm.
So you wanna
not just
see
the line
actual
item.
bodies on the list.
No, well,
No.
not names. Nope, just like, sorry, I'm gonna throw you under the bus because it's easiest because you're here and nobody.
Do I need to put my football helmet on?
No, no, but like, if we're hiring a superintendent that's licensed, this is what their salary range is for these years. And if the request is to move the salary range up, that we don't just see the superintendent's salary line move up, but where is that in comparison with all of our other admin staff?
Mhm.
That's what I'm thinking,
Yeah,
seeing that whole picture together.
That's part of the work we're doing right now.
yes. And you should understand what the budgetary impact is.
Mhm.
So if you change EA twos, what is the budgetary
Right.
impact of that?
We didn't do a
Across the
budget
board.
impact on the classified salary schedule we brought to you the other day, because it was just simply bumping up the minimum, the bottom to meet state minimum requirements. Didn't worry about it. But when we bring that back to you after we've done our comparisons, done our math, looked at, where we need to be, yes, we'll have a financial impact for you. What is that going to do for the budget? What's it going to cost us if we increase this salary schedule
And
with
also,
current staffing? And do we have the budget for it? Or do we have to phase it in? And there's all those different types of questions that need to be looked at.
what are the long-term implications of
Mhm.
COLA increases?
Yeah.
Right.
So I have a question on approving contracts. We talked about the dollar amount that's in our policy right now.
Yep.
So it's a policy of 75,000 or above. Do school boards ever approve contract not based or in an and or situation where it's $75,000 or they fall under an admin salary schedule? And so they need to come to the board to approve. So I'm thinking of people that maybe make, like, do they make, maybe their contract is less than $75,000, but they're gonna work what's the largest contract days?
260?
A 260 contract with the board. Have you ever seen something like that?
Well, you're gonna approve your administrative contracts independently,
Okay,
and those positions are going to be approved.
okay,
So that's kind of a,
Well, for
Yeah.
us, it's you approve the salary schedule,
right,
and then
Okay.
I just simply place them in that salary
in that
schedule.
salary, so it's
Okay.
approved.
So it's already been approved. Now, the reset, we're also resetting some positions are going to increase in days, some positions need to decrease in days.
right.
You'll see all that when we bring it to you as a big package.
Are you talking about your non-rep folks,
Well,
like,
and maybe I should just be more,
building
maybe
administrator?
just like throw it out there and just say it. What's the process for approving new positions where like because sometimes.
creating a new position?
So like, yeah, like the contract's there, it's a $60,000 one. They're gonna be working counselor services, whatever that looks like. I'm totally drawing, I could be totally wrong on what all of that looks like. But it was a new position that was created outside of the guidance from the board, or we don't even know why we need this position. I think that's what we've ran into a lot of. Here's a position, we'll hire it. Here's a position, we'll hire it. And I'm trying to go, I don't want to micromanage. How can we be in the know of that approval process
You have to be.
So-
without feeling like, well, it was less than 75,000, so I didn't get to know about it, or, what that looks
Creating
like.
positions, the board holds the authority for creating positions.
That's the answer I wanted.
Yes.
Well, that's the answer
Yes.
I was looking.
So
for.
say
Not
you were
what I
gonna
wanted,
create,
I just wanted to know.
superintendent says, Alsea School District needs a data analyst one.
Yep.
Gotta have one. We can't proceed. We gotta have this
Yep.
person. He's gonna come to the board. He's gonna create that PD with salary range. He's gonna bring it to the board and you get to ask all the hard questions. And then you approve that, then at that point, he can then go out, hire someone within that range.
Okay, thank you.
That's how that works.
I understand.
But contract authority, I mean,
No, I don't care about
That-
contract
that's a-
authority
that's-
anymore now.
yeah, that's HR. And then there's, contracts like, I don't know, excavation or whatever, pick anytime. I mean, school
Right.
districts have to contract for gazillions of things. And it gets really messy when you get a bond
Mhm.
and they're hiring,
Oh, it's messy.
construction folks and spending a lot of money. You may have to adjust your policy. So, yeah. Contracting. It's really not that tough. Your finance folks will keep you out of trouble. Vision, adopt policy, sets budget, wait, where was I? Contracts. Adopts policy, sets budget, you set the budget, but the superintendent's gonna develop that budget for you. And your monitoring progress, and the superintendent's gonna report on that.
To talk briefly about the budgeting process,
Yeah, sure.
that's always been not just from my own experiences, but from other superintendents, a point of concern,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of tension between budget committee and superintendents. The superintendent brings forth a budget. Budget committee says, well, we don't like this and this and this and that. Change this, this to that, that to that, and this to this. Like, whoa, where did that come from?
This is why we have strategic priorities. Because if you've done, set your priorities, you know where you want to go. If the board, you've set a vision, and you've got these big priorities, and the superintendent creates a budget aligned to those priorities, when those questions come up, when your strategic allocations come into question, you can explain why. Well, we know that we have kids that are struggling with, depression. Increasing number of kids, are saying that they're having suicidal ideation. We really need to address this. And that's why we've added 2 FTE in counseling. So when that question comes up, that's for the Alsea School District, that would be a very large allocation.
But what if you have I'm just trying to pick your brain here.
Sure.
What if you have a couple of very strong board members that say, we don't want 2 counselors? In fact, we want to cut the counselors and hire an athletic director.
That's a problem with the strategic priorities then. I mean, and
that's my point, is that we have to rely upon those strategic priorities to avoid those types of clashes.
and educate the board along the way.
Mhm.
Again, it goes back to no surprises. So as you're rolling up the budget, letting them know where those strategic allocations are going to fall. What are those priorities? How are those priorities going to manifest in the budget? I really appreciate how, taking off my OSBA hat and going down to Corvallis now, I really appreciate how our finance officer does that. We have 2 pages where it shows where our discretionary dollars went and how it's aligned to the, the district goals. And yeah, it even has FTE on it. It's really nice.
When you look at setting a budget and you go through the process of with the budget committee, we have the community budget, or we have the community members that come together for ours.
Yep.
Can you help us understand really what their role is with it? Because I think we had some misunderstandings of like how we reallocate funds or ask to move things around. Does it have to be a community member that asks for it? Can it be a board member? I don't have any knowledge on it, so I'm
Yeah.
kind of helping to understand the delineation of roles.
So when the budget committee meets, you are no longer school board members. You never get to take the hat off, right? But really, you're just budget committee members. So you're all equal in that space. And so, no, I mean, it's always a good practice to have the budget committee chaired and led by members of the community. It's a great way to bench people for the school board. We want to think about succession planning. So using that tool. But yeah, no one has any more authority than anybody else in that space. Now, is that completely true? No, school board members are still school board members and you'll have more authority. And you will have more knowledge of what's in that budget than your community members will.
That's what I was getting at, because in the past, when we did that meeting, we were one, but we didn't vote on anything that night. They made recommendations to us. And then the next meeting, we take the recommendations and we would either vote them in or.
And that's kind of what we're
That's
doing.
what we
that-
did.
Except
With
for
that
when
money
we
was-
vote, we're a quorum. Does that know, right? We're still
In
a
the-
quorum in that budget meeting if we're voting on stuff.
Nope. You were convened as the budget committee.
The
You,
way we were always told was we just don't vote on stuff that night. They can vote to give us that. but we weren't told.
so the budget committee, well, the budget committee can direct the district to make adjustments to the budget. But then that modified budget, the recommended budget goes to the board for approval.
Right.
So the
But
situation.
those are two separate processes though.
The situation was we had unappropriated funds that we were appropriating to somewhere, that we were allocating it somewhere. And so he's like, "Wait, you're a board member, you can't make that recommendation." And I'm like, well, I thought I could because I'm a budget member today. And so I had made the recommendation to allocate the funds to the bond, because we had 484,000 or something that.
You can make the motion. I mean, the budget committee has to
Yeah.
agree to it.
We
Right.
kept it separate, because I asked them the same
Right.
thing when we
Right.
did the financial.
we
We
did
did keep it separate.
Completely.
It was the same night, yes,
Yes.
but it was separate.
See, and he was saying, he
Or
didn't
no,
think.
was it-
It's two different nights.
It's two
Yeah.
different nights.
When we allocated the money,
We recommended an allocation.
That's
night
right.
one
So
and
it
voted
was
as a-
separate.
Or
Yeah.
separate,
You voted as a
So we
budget
did-
committee and
That-
then.
The next night, that's right.
yes,
Oh, then you came back as the board? and-
yeah, well,
The
in our
next, the
board meeting.
next meeting.
To accept the, or to.
To adopt.
The budget.
Okay,
I was always told back then that they made the recommendations.
The community members.
Yes.
Not
And then
in-
the board, I guess we couldn't vote, because it really wasn't a vote. It was just recommendations, and then in our board meeting is when
The
we
adoption.
took those recommendations and approved them. To put them in those.
interesting. No, the budget committee can make changes to the budget, or it can direct the district to make changes to the budget. They have that authority.
Well, whether
but
you're
in
a
your-
board member or not.
Yeah, because you're all the same, but you need 6 members for your budget committee.
Right.
You're gonna need 6 members to agree to do that, though.
And that's
To say-
sometimes hard.
Take X dollars out of the unappropriated any fund balance and put it here.
And there's also a limit on how much change can be made in the budget.
Correct, but I don't know that.
I don't remember.
I don't
what the limit
remember what it is either.
There is a limit.
And you can't make programs go away or create programs or anything like that.
Right.
because
You
that's
can only
operational.
you can only go down to the object level. It's pretty limited what you can do. Good question. We are not even halfway through the slide deck.
Good discussion.
It's back to civics from high school. One of the cool things about being on school board is that you have executive, legislative, and judicial powers that, and you exercise your judicial capacity more often than your other local government colleagues. So you don't have a city council, but city councils very rarely have hearings, judicial hearings, and same with county commissioners, but we do it, fairly often. Probably because we just get more complaints. So your executive powers, anytime you're adopting policy or approving, we were talking about contract authority, approving contracts. So anytime you're doing a final approval, you're exercising executive authority. Legislative is anything where you're a process, and this is really around policy, policy development is the classic example of where you're creating a policy brand new, whatever that is. When I first got on the Corvallis School Board, I had a couple parents reach out to me and they wanted a no idling policy. They didn't want people to idle their cars in the parking lot. So we created a no idling policy. So that was a legislative process. And then judicial, when you're hearing cases on appeal or you're hearing a complaint against the board or the superintendent. So judging previous decisions. All right. Oh, question slide. You guys don't need that. Okay, now to the fun part. You guys are already asking lots of questions. What time is it? Oh my goodness. Oh, I get you for a while longer. All right. So how about this one? So the whole idea here is I'm going to put something a scenario up here. And you have to decide whether it's board work or not. The first one's easy.
So, yeah, we can't talk with that.
Yeah, you guys might know this one. Modifying the student discipline policy. Is that board work? Brian says yes. Yeah, sure. You're modifying policy. That's how you govern, is through policy. Absolutely good. Yeah, and you have policies for that. I mean, no OSBA slide deck would be complete without mention of policy. So here we go. Policy development, policy BF and BFCA, administrative regulations. So yeah, policy development. I love that. Oh, I love this sentence. The formula, so the sentence at the bottom, so this is our example policy. I just used, I didn't pull yours, but I love the sentence. The formulation and adoption of policies recorded in writing will constitute the basic method by which the board will exercise its leadership in the operation of the school system. Oh, so elegant. Love it. Makes me all shivery. Okay, and then of course, we also have administrative rights. So we have these policies, and then to interpret those, the superintendent, most administrative rules are created by staff or by the superintendent. There are a handful that the board needs to approve as well. But the superintendent is authorized to formulate such administrative regulations appropriate for the implementation of policies adopted by the board and necessary for the consistent operation of the district. So the board, you establish policies that tend to be broad brush strokes of what you expect. But to operationalize that, we have to actually have some rules on what do we actually do. And so the superintendent is tasked with having those. Fortunately, you guys subscribe to OSBA policy services. So, I mean, our team is developing those, and then you can and should modify those so they fit your district. Do not accept any OSBA policy. Spencer was here, he kicked my tail. Don't expect, don't,
Yeah, say that again, Vincent.
yeah, don't approve any OSBA, generic policy on its face. Take a look at it and make sure that it fits your community. That's your job. And it's really important. They'll get you there. And if you want to make changes and you're not sure what the impact would be, you can always reach out to policy services and they're happy to do a legal or legislative review of that.
The only thing to keep in mind is if the policy is reflecting current state and federal law,
Check.
Right.
there's not much we can do about that.
You don't want to violate the law.
No.
Okay. Oh, this is my Snazzy. You can see everybody's policy. When I first started OSBA, I didn't even know that it existed. You can always see your policies online, but there's also, if you want this URL, I should just put it on the slide.
It's really easy to find. You just go to our OSBA site and then
And you can navigate to that?
to the main one, and you can navigate there super easy.
Mhm,
It'll pull all the districts up.
mhm.
It's really cool because policies really vary from district to district.
They do.
So when people ask me policy questions, I go shopping for the ones that I like.
Mhm.
I would like to see district size next to those policies.
Wouldn't that be great?
Because then I could see if I was looking at somebody who was like
Comparable.
size or.
Mhm.
That'd be cool.
Well, most of them you can kind of figure out if they're bigger or smaller, not all of them.
Yeah, I mean,
Just to-
Adrian.
Adrian, Arlington,
yeah, those are all small. Esther is pretty big,
Astoria, yeah,
bigger.
Big Weston.
Blatchley, yeah,
Mhm.
Blackview.
Blackview are really small.
That would be really small. So there you go. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So yeah, you can look at all at policies. It's important to be nerding out on policy.
I actually don't know them.
This is just to remind you that you will get policy updates from OSBA Policy Services. They're working on a whole pack of policy updates right now. That'll be going out here in just a bit.
Yeah.
How about this one? Establishing an in-school suspension system. Is that board work? No one's gonna bite on that?
I think
Why-
it's like-
Why not?
And it's because if it's an in-school suspension, it's for them, and then they can inform us what they're gonna do, but it's really just the technicality that he gets to take care of it. We shouldn't honestly hear about it that much.
What's their system?
Yeah.
Spot on, yeah.
Administrative system.
Yeah,
We already
system.
gave you the disciplinary policy. you operationalize it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well said. Okay, oh, but there's a policy for that.
Huh, weird.
You can shape what you can shape. Just because we're developing a system doesn't mean that you can't have some influence on what that looks like. And I always read the second sentence. The objectives of disciplining any student must be to help the student develop a positive attitude towards self-discipline, realize the responsibility of one's actions, and to maintain a productive learning environment. So setting parameters on what that suspension system is gonna look like.
I think that's a great example of what the work that a policy does, because it sets the parameters of for which we develop our procedures.
Mhm.
You know, we set it under that. You know, I had a staff member years ago tell me, I just want that kid to hurt. And I said, what? Are you listening to yourself? No, that's not what discipline's about. It's not about hurting kids. It's trying to help them, you know, change your behaviors, much like that is saying. And so I think it's a great framework to talk about. That's the policy that is the umbrella of which then we operate under.
I can remember a few that hurt that didn't take in-school suspension.
Oh, that was back in the day.
Back in the
Seemed to
day.
work quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a swat on my bottom in the 3rd grade.
Oh, this is a really good one. And maybe some of you know this one. Approving the high school handbook includes specific dress code expectations. I know you have a dress code policy. But do you approve handbooks? Do school boards approve handbooks?
We have.
How we did.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I don't think we have to do it.
The answer is it depends.
I was gonna say.
It's a trick
That's a trick
question.
question.
It is a trick question. It depends on your policy.
Yeah.
Some boards do approve their handbook. Those are smaller districts. But you know, in larger districts, it's just not. And I think it's kind of gone out of, I don't want to say fashion, but out of practice, because handbooks are really just expressions of policy anyway.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well,
So,
just
I
their
mean-
expectation, right?
It's the AR of the discipline policy. is
Correct.
What it is.
Yep.
You know, and the other thing that I've had explained to me by some of the OSBA attorneys is that when a board approves a student handbook, where's the appeal? Versus if it was a superintendent administrative function and somebody is appealing the handbook, they can go to the board and say, that doesn't look right. You know, they can appeal it to the board.
Oh,
But if
that's
the board
interesting.
approves it, where do they go?
There's no-
ODE? Legal aspects?
It would have to
Boy,
be
Yep.
what, IDEA or
Something.
discrimination.
Yeah,
That would be
it'd
the only
be a
way
big
that
deal.
ODE would see it.
So there's two ways of looking at it. You know, and like you said, it just kind of depends on what the district wants and what the policy says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can boards review handbooks?
I'm just gonna go down that path and say, can we review it to make sure that it's aligned to our policy?
Sure, you can.
Yes.
Isn't that what we've been working on with the athletic policy, the athletic handbook?
And two of the
Well, I think we're looking at,
veterans, isn't it?
I thought we were actually looking at creating an athletics policy because the one that's in place is not technically a policy. It's a guide, it's like a handbook.
But, and that's just it, it was a handbook, it was a student athletic handbook.
Yeah, what I've seen.
There's a
is
policy
not-
for that, for
But I
sure.
don't think there's even a policy on books. And so I think that was,
Let me look it up.
I think it was
I
always
just
a,
know I have that in here from, you know, when Joy created it and gave it to us and we went through it and was reviewing it and we keep tabling it.
Procedure rather than a policy.
yeah, I mean,
And I'm having,
operating practice or agreement between
The
coaches. and
student
parents.
athletics
Yeah.
policy is really big. It's broad.
yeah,
But I mean, yes, I mean,
Okay. Oh, handbooks, there we go. That, if you wanted to look it up, CHCA, remember that code.
Oh, yeah. mhm. The
Keep
biggest
that
lie
top
I
of
tell
mind.
myself is I can remember that.
Remember those codes. How about review? Oh, we've already talked about this. Reviewing applications, interviewing, selecting selected candidates, and making a recommendation for hiring the high school football coach. A school board's never done that before.
So back to athletics,
Yeah,
we do have a district policy on interscholastic athletics.
there you go.
It basically says, board believes that participation in interscholastic athletics offers individual students opportunities to grow physically and intellectually, socially through their participation in team and individual sports. The district will provide comparable interscholastic athletic competition for male and female students in a variety of sports. Students be encouraged to participate on the basis of their interest and physical condition. Qualifying coaching and supervisory personnel be provided in all school-sponsored athletic provided for all school-sponsored athletic events. In other words, we have the right personnel there at the events. And the district is a member of the Oregon School Activities Association, OSAA. In all athletic matters, the board will adhere to the policies, rules, and regulations of that body and the State Board of Education. That's the policy. And from that, we can easily develop a athletic handbook for coaches and parents and athletes.
Is that
Define
what you
the-
were reading? 'Cause that's one of them, I think.
No.
It's much shorter than that. But what that tells me is that
What is that?
this is like a,
There's something else. in
that's
there,
like a
but I haven't found it
guidance.
yet, but-
or an operational agreement that you just handed him.
Is that the one they signed?
This would,
No, that's actually, see, if you look at the date, 2013,
Mhm.
so it's somewhere in one of my books, and I've been
But-
trying to clean this up, so I'm not typing some of
This-
the stuff around. but-
this is what you would find in an athletic handbook,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what was brought to the board.
right?
As-
And I would say that this would be a handbook that the board would be aware of, but not approve as a policy. Because that way you preserve that appeal. Because athletics is a hot topic, you know, playtime, opportunities, things,
Oh, yeah.
all this sort of stuff. And so I would definitely say that this would be a handbook that the board would want to be aware of, but not approve, because that way you guys are the appeals for when something becomes contentious and
So-
comes your way.
So help me delineate this.
Mhm.
I coach a sport.
Yep.
And my handbook.
Yep.
Says my student can't, my student athlete can't fall below a 2.0 overall.
Mhm,
So I have to stay 2.0 or above.
mhm.
But as a coach, I decide to play them. Now, I violated the handbook, but I didn't violate my policy because my policy reaching back to OSAA is much more lenient than the handbook is. So
right.
as a coach, does the athletic director then get to hold me accountable? Because that's not a policy, that's a handbook.
As an athletic director, I would say, I'm sorry, coach. If we're adhering to the OSAA regulations, that's what we adhere to in terms of grading.
So you wouldn't even put grading in, or you,
I would reflect it in the athletic handbook, but I would make it word for word from OSAA, because the policy says we follow the OSAA
And
guidelines.
it also depends on if you do that for everybody or if you do it just for one person.
what, yeah, but
Right.
then I guess the
Right.
other side is that, okay, if I say it's a 2.0 and they fall below it, I don't let them play and the parents come back and say, okay, school board, my child is held accountable, but you follow this policy, which means why do we even have grade levels in there that are misaligned? Why
Because
would we have our
you can
handbook?
expect higher expectations as long as it's across the board.
But
If
no,
we do
you
that
can't.
across the board,
The hard part
No,
is
because-
tracking it all, especially when our numbers start getting where they're at,
mhm,
then it becomes,
Oh,
and when your numbers are down in that thing, one kid can cost you nothing to play for games.
well, you and I are probably gonna be misaligned or differently
Well, I'm
aligned
sure
on
we
that
are.
because I'm gonna say forfeit the game and
But-
let the kids
but
feel the
here-
pain from it, but.
We aren't a local school, we're a charter school, we got kids on buses, some of them for well over an hour
Absolutely.
after practices. And then they're up here, they're coming back, that's things that we haven't done in the school district
Yeah.
before. So we're already expecting a bunch, and some of those kids are working on top of that stuff.
No, I agree. And so that's where, that's where I guess I'm saying like, the handbook should really be a goal system, not a child will or will not play based on,
But I do agree with you to one point, no kid should be allowed to fail.
I agree that there's a relationship between coaches and teachers that should really build those students up.
the effective coaches that I've seen in my career, ones that they embrace academics as much as they do athletics.
Absolutely.
And they create study groups for their
Mhm.
athletes. They might bench them for a practice or two. Get out your math, Johnny, and get that done right now. You know, you're not playing out here or practicing until,
Back when
You
I
know.
was when we had kids get probation, we had an hour before practice. Right? The stage was set.
Yeah.
And anybody that was on probation better be on there. Some of those other upper level kids better be there.
absolutely,
As a
great way to
team.
produce team.
Yeah.
Yes,
Anywho, I guess
yes,
my opinion is then I don't think our handbook should be any more stringent than our policy.
I agree. That has to be aligned.
Which
Yep.
I bite my tongue the rest of that sentence. But I think, but to fairness, then you have to keep it aligned because
Yeah.
it's not fair either way how somebody interprets it. And it's not fair for a coach to be in the hot seat or a student to be in the hot seat if our policy dictates one way.
Well, we want their kids coming here.
Mhm.
We don't want them going back there or that in between. And to do. And then that's the hard part here. We have to sell this.
Mhm.
Mhm.
There has to be consistency.
Figure it
So back to
No,
that-
And that's
So
okay.
back to that question, is that board work?
Oh, hiring the football coach? What do you think?
Mhm. Good stuff.
I don't know the first damn thing about coaching. I'm not gonna be on that hiring committee. Yeah. And we had that conversation. Yeah. So. Sets the expectation that hiring procedures will be established to employ qualified administrators necessary to carry out duties as identified by the district. Deb's nodding her head. She says,
I'm
yep.
not saying a word.
Is it board work? Why is it board work?
It's policy. Based in establishing hiring procedures.
So it's even before that.
It's like
Expectations.
expectations.
That's
That's
it. That's the trick in that one is you're setting the expectation.
for the
And I
hiring
think I got it
procedures.
snazzy. Oh, there it is. There's your policy. The superintendent will develop and maintain a recruitment program designed to attract licensed personnel. It is the responsibility of the superintendent with the assistance of the other district administrators to determine the personnel needs of the district. You set the expectation, you don't set the procedure. He'll create the procedures.
Which we do not have a GCC, by the way. That's one thing we need to add.
I thought we did have a GCC.
All right. Is policy services overhauling you guys? When are they starting?
Yeah, they did, I think.
I think we're slated for them. I
We're
don't think
slated.
they've started yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
But you're in the queue?
Yeah.
we're in the queue.
Good.
So that would be something we would want to add. on this
They'll
policy,
add it.
Saying, because that again, sets the umbrella, sets the oversight,
mhm.
you know, and that trickles down to our procedures, of how we hire. That's the goal. We have to make sure that we follow the policy.
You're gonna love having an overhaul done. It's a pain to do it, but boy, once it's done, you'll really like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, collaborates with staff to set the priority or goal that high quality instruction will be a focus in the school district. Deb's saying no. Christine says yes. What do you think?
He collaborates with the staff and he comes to us for guidance.
Kind of, except for we collaborate with staff in work sessions and set goals based off of what we hear from the staff.
Remember that collaborative governance slide?
Mhm.
I totally appreciate your separation of, it's like, oh, we keep our distance. I appreciate
So
your,
it used to be other
so you're on that black and
Here.
white slide
in here.
Yeah.
and you're like, I'm not going over the line because I know where the line's at. isn't
Yeah.
it? So what we're talking about, that collaborate is actually those red arrows.
Hmm.
So,
See, he has to come to us.
Yeah.
but
I will-
there will be times when you will be collaborating with staff and I know you already have.
Oh, yeah, we do.
And we do have a policy called instructional goals. And it outlines very clearly
I
what
wonder if it's in here. District goals?
district goals. works
Oh,
also.
wait, no, you have policy AE, right?
IA,
IA,
Instructional. goals.
instructional goals, yeah. So yeah, you definitely will, and if you do strategic planning, you will want your staff right here in the room with you doing that work. Yep.
You know, I've
sure.
been here 7 years and we had never done that. At least I
Never
haven't.
talked to them.
I have talked to them,
No, as a board though. I
Yeah.
mean, a total board
not
Yeah.
as a total board, no,
on your own.
individually, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, district goals. Oh, and this is where we pitch off into our discussion of goals because this is a a question that we get fairly often. There's confusion. You know, what's a district goal? What's a board goal? And our board goals, district goals, and what about the superintendent goals? Are the superintendent goals like the district goals? It's confusing. So let's set that clear. So district goals, so this is essentially this classic neoclassical structure is my artistic interpretation of what strategic documents look like. At the top, we have the board's vision for what education in the LC school district will look like. You have a mission on what you're going to do, how the district is going to do that. You have values that if compromised will prevent the district from achieving those ends. And then you have these goals, or some people call them pillars. Some people call them buckets, whatever you want to call them. It's what you're going to get done. That's like every child will graduate, or, every student will show growth or X amount of growth. And then you build sub priorities within it. These are your big buckets where you're going to prioritize your attention.
And we're going to go through this as a part of the newly aligned continuous improvement plan program for the state of Oregon.
Check.
So we'll be doing this work fairly shortly in the fall.
Yep.
As we get moving on that project, and we'll be revisiting it quite often. And it's a lengthy process that, they plan 2 to 4 years out in advance, but we'll be setting that.
So you'll remember that when I said did the management versus governance versus management, and that's the what versus the how. You see it again here. The what are the goals? What are we going to get done? And you also are explaining why we're doing it. What do we believe about this community? What do we believe about our children? The how is in the strategies and the actions nested under those strategies. And then of course the tracking measures that go along with that. So that's the base or the foundation of this is the operational component of this. Everything else is the kind of the goals and guiding documents. This is district goals. These are your big, hairy, audacious goals that you're aiming for.
Oh, good question on that. So in the world I live in on a daily basis, when we write goals, you write them in the SMART foundation. So they're specific, they're measurable, attainable, relevant to the why, and then timely. So let's say my goal is 100% graduation rate. Sean says, can we set a percentage increase? And I say, no, 100%. And it's not that it's unobtainable, but how do you measure improvement, or even if you fail that goal, how do you measure that improvement? And so when we sit down, we sit there and write the goals. Are we also going to, do we also have a framework on that to make sure that we can measure it and that it is actionable and it's not out like, do they give us a template
Yes,
or
yes.
do we
Yes,
just?
we do.
Okay.
Well,
Absolutely.
we can give you a template, but I really don't like doing that because every district is different. I mean, I just finished a planning process with Weston out on the Columbia Plateau district, about the same size, but theirs is going to look different than here. There are two different communities. I wouldn't dream of bringing their document and saying, oh, you should do it like this. That's not appropriate.
And
So-
the thing I like to do is have the board set the goal. And then as an admin team, we start looking at the strategies, the measurable, how are we going to measure this? And we bring it back to the board as a package. Okay, here's the goal you set. Here's our SMART structure.
Okay.
Here's what we're suggesting.
Right.
Okay.
Send us an looks. And
Yeah.
maybe one of you says, well, what about, that's a good thought. I hadn't thought of that,
So you might chafe
Right.
against this a little bit because you're used to that SMART goal format.
I'm
When
cool
we
with
see
just
that
using
big
the
band
S.
of goals, those are aspirational goals. They're gonna be broader than probably than what you're expecting. Once we get down below there, we're talking about the superintendent's strategic plan.
Mhm.
That's the operational plan. He's gonna definitely have
Yes.
measurables. And notice I said
Yes.
measures at the bottom. You
Yes.
have to have tracking measures associated with all of this.
Yes. It's actually a Division 22 requirement also.
Cool, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That you have to have tracking measures? Wow.
No, that you have to have this process, the whole thing. That's part of the
Okay.
SIP requirements.
Yeah.
And, it's attached to Division 22, which are the assurances that I need to be giving the board.
So remember when I was talking.
No, we don't have those.
Huh?
We don't have those.
The Division 22 standards.
No, we don't have the goals to
goals
meet the division.
to meet
22
that.
standards.
Right, right. So I'm sorry, Vincent, if I'm interrupting.
Go ahead.
But I think I want the board to start thinking about the vision, the mission, the values. If you start thinking of those three, then the goals are actually quite easy to write. It's easy to write goals that are very broad, and we're trying to narrow them down a little bit. That's a natural human reaction, but what is the vision of this district? What do we envision? I've heard people talk about a CTE vision. I've heard people talk about more of a comprehensive vision. I don't know, what is the vision of our district? That's a really good board and community discussion. What is the vision?
And
then-
then you get bonus points if you can say it in 5 words or less.
Yeah,
I really like the bringing the community into the vision though. I think that's huge.
I think it's huge. Yeah, we could set some work groups and bring some people in. And eat a
Focus groups.
spaghetti or something, and we could talk about just this. What is the vision? And letting them an opportunity to give input, and then that would might help the board set the vision. It's kind of we have an opportunity to rebrand this district. What is the vision of the Allison School District?
And we talk a lot about parents in that, but I think we have a lot of community members that have grandkids or things we have we're a charter that can bring those kids in too, So I think for myself, it's expanding that scope of who the community is and where that impacts the district.
Sorry, I just had to
Sorry.
say that
No,
because I
that's
think that's the
important.
juncture we're kind of at.
This is really important stuff.
And that's the difference between us and like an Athena Weston. They're gonna have a different vision, than what LC will have in terms of vision. What is our vision? What's our focus gonna look like?
Okay, so district goals. So these are the ones, remember that I had the collaborative governance model up there, and I talked about shared language, shared metrics. This is where that lives. So teachers will know what the district goals are, and you'll talk about them in the boardroom. And people are going to come to you and say, "Oh, you should do this. Follow this shiny object." And you're going to say, "No, because we're doing this. We talked about this. We talked about this with our community. We talked about this with our educators. We're focusing here."
Yes.
That's called strategic abandonment. Deciding what you're not going to do. And it's crucially important. Because remember, are you guys only meeting once a month? So optimally 3 hours. So that's 36 hours in a year you get to spend doing governance. It's not a lot of time. That's not even a work week. That's it.
But it's not usually only 3 hours.
No,
Yeah.
that's-
Try to get yourself down to 3 hours and then consider going to 2 meetings. But I don't want to push you anywhere. So district goals. Okay.
2 meetings a month?
Yes. 2 meetings a month. Every 2 weeks.
But you could even make it where you could- it's over 2 hours, it's really. You can do pretty much all the time or less.
Think about it. Okay. Policy IA.
Hey, we got it.
And I pulled one from I borrowed this from the Echo School District. They did roles and responsibilities for them, I don't know, a year ago. I think the point of this slide is make sure your instructional goals align with your district goals.
Yes.
So oftentimes this policy will sit dormant for 5, 10 years and is really dusty So, and whereas the current board is like, we got these great ideas of where we're going and we're doing this stuff and this is sitting out there. So make sure that you're keeping this policy up. Okay, superintendent goals. So definitely aligned to district goals for sure, but really are rooted in professional performance. So this is really about how is the board going to help the superintendent grow as a professional. So yeah, definitely you're going to want to have some components of district performance. Some of the artifacts that your superintendent will bring forward will be related to district performance, and that'll be aligned to your district goals. Not all of them necessarily. Your superintendent may identify key goals that he wants to work on in the coming year that are aligned to the district goals, but that doesn't mean that they're the same thing. The other key point here is that they're developed collaboratively. Your superintendent is going to bring those goals to the board and say, hey, this is what I want to work on for the next year. And the board goes, yeah, or tinker, and then we'll approve that. You do that collaboratively. And then you have check-ins. We'll talk about this tomorrow night. You'll have check-ins throughout the year, you know, just to see where everyone's at. But really, these are aimed for strategic or not strategic, professional performance of the administrator. Okay, and then there's board goals. So board goals are really about your growth and learning. How are you going to improve your practice? These are more akin to the superintendent goals than they are district goals. Again, they're aligned because everything you do should be aligned to your district goals. You shouldn't expend any effort going off of your district goals. So these are, talks about board practice. But yeah, this is about your own professional development. That could be doing stuff with OSBA, could be some other learning with staff, could be any number of things, could be a book study, whatever, but it's aligned to the work that you're trying to do for kids. Okay, so those are the 3 types of goals. Any questions on that?
How often do they change?
Typically, well, superintendent goals and board goals will shift every year. Your district goals usually have a 5-year shelf life, 3 to 5 year shelf life. And even though, and I say 3 to 5 years, you're probably going to come back to them. You are going to come back to them every year. You overhaul them every 3 to 5 years. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go away or change dramatically. So I referenced Athena Weston, just finished a process. They were doing an overhaul. They had a set of strategic documents that they wanted to do a refresh. They had been developed in 2018 before the pandemic. They wanted to do a refresh, so we overhauled them. And half of it went away, but we kept the other half for sure. So if you have strategic goals that work, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Which Athena Weston is where the OSBA president resides.
Yeah, it is. Sir Scott Rogers. Yeah,
Scott Rogers.
I'm name dropping them because they're just a terrific board. They're awesome people. They're really put the
He
work.
did the rural caucus hot topic, and he was extremely knowledgeable.
I was happy to see that the OSBA president was from a small school district. I thought that was really cool.
Yep. Yeah, just because you're a small town doesn't mean you can't have great education.
Absolutely.
You can take that and just hold that right here. Anytime anybody talks bad about your school, you just
Absolutely.
okay. Why did I put the slide up? Vision goals. Oh, this is all about just making sure that your budget is aligned to your district vision or district goals. That's really the whole point of it. Sorry, I haven't done the slide deck in several months, so it's been a while. Okay. Create specific strategies, including professional development activities to reach the high quality instructor district priority or goal. Does that work for it? Why not?
I I think it is.
think it isn't because it's setting specific strategy. And that is
Operational.
operational.
Yeah.
True.
We set
But
it,
it's
we set that
also-
high quality goal.
But it's also setting, including professional development activities
But that's an
for high
operation.
quality instruction. So maybe superintendent,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
We would
Yeah.
approve that professional development though. if they wanted
And-
that.
right, and that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And you'll
Yeah.
certainly set the expectation that those things will happen.
Yeah.
You do in policy, for sure. I want to move a little bit quicker here. Complaints. I get a feeling that you guys are pretty good with complaints, but
We are professional with that one.
okay, so make decisions on complaints about school district operations or personnel. Steve's like, no, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Next topic.
Yeah. So no, we don't do that. You guys, when does the board hear complaints?
They're not satisfied with the superintendent or
Okay.
about the superintendent,
So superintendent, complaints against the superintendent. What else?
not
Kids.
satisfied with the result of what the superintendent decided.
Yeah, on appeal. Yeah.
Appeal.
Is that what you're saying?
Kids. And it has to do with kids and expulsions.
Well, expulsion is where we can vote in executive session, I think.
Yeah, you can't take,
I don't know if we
Right.
can hear the complaint about kids
That would be on appeal. When the board
on
hears it.
appeal.
You don't hear all the expulsions. Right. Oh, wait. Oh, complaint procedure. So yes, and you know this. So complaints on appeal. So appealing the superintendent's decision. Okay. Complaints directly against the superintendent. We covered that. What else? How about complaints against a board member
Yeah.
or the whole board?
So, just out of curiosity, the complaints against a board member or the whole board are done in open session. Though. We don't have the right to executive session for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Although that is a topic of debate. But my recommendation, my strong recommendation to you is do that in public. Yeah, that's not settled law.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say, shouldn't that be the right of the person that's being complained about?
If it's a board member or against the whole board, yeah, going into the executive session to have to discuss that complaint. Yeah, unless it concerned a student, I would recommend against it. Yeah, you're not protected by executive session. I think, and I have to preface that with, I'm not an attorney and that's not a legal opinion.
Also
Fair
depends what the
statement.
complaint is.
Well, yeah. because
Yeah.
then
If
it would be-
legality, I mean,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
if your attorney
consult-
says not to, because you did something, then
You're gonna
consult the attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah, consult
Okay.
district council. We would definitely, okay. Okay, what about conversations with parents? So the first thing we're gonna do is honor that conversation as best we can. When someone's growling at us about something that's happened in the schools. You don't wanna bias yourself, because you may need that, you've gone through this. You may have to hear that complaint on appeal.
right.
And so we don't want to bias ourselves, so we want to avoid hearing any details. So no ex parte communication, this is a legal term. Yeah, we just don't want, this is usually associated with juries. And when we hear complaints, we are acting as jury in that situation. And so, yeah, we just want to avoid that. Let's see what other. Yeah, and then this routine, you've already dealt with this, directing them to resources. So
Mhm.
with the parent, it's gonna be the teacher principal, and you can send them to your complaint policy. Totally fine. Yeah. Yeah, and let the superintendent know. Always close the loop. Always close the loop, because as school board members, we have no operational capacity, we have no superpowers, but the superintendent does. Superintendent can talk to the principal and get resources on that situation to resolve it.
I
We
will say on that, I mean, even though it's not a formal complaint process or even a conversation, I tend to take the practice of calling Sean and saying, hey, so Facebook, just keep you in the loop of what's going on here. I like to make the practice of never ever responding as a
Oh,
board
for sure.
member on Facebook. If somebody's saying something, I might message them privately and say, hey, is there a question that you had? Or I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation. I'm not gonna reply in a public forum, but here's what I have for you.
Yeah.
As just an understanding, but then I always, Sean, you should probably know what my conversation was, as well as
Mhm.
what I'm seeing out there.
And that's the cool thing about Facebook is you can screenshot it and send it to the superintendent.
I just came to the conclusion, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true.
That, isn't that a policy?
Yeah. Oh, boy, yeah, there's been some
But
Facebook problems.
I just, but in general, like, I think that's, if we are all in the loop, or if we're having a like, if Ryan says, hey, I saw this and I went and I talked to this person and he looped Sean in, then like that conversation's already happened, there's an
Right.
understanding. Hopefully it doesn't even get to a complaint process, because maybe you can have that conversation before it
Head it
becomes a
off.
complaint.
You bet.
Had a situation this weekend, had some staff members call me out of concern what was being posted on Facebook. And a lot of it was, I think I emailed you guys a little bit.
Mhm.
So I ended up emailing the complainant just personally, not confronting them on Facebook, just saying, hey, let me introduce myself, I'm the new superintendent, just want to clear the air. Here's the data.
Yeah,
Love to meet with you. Please call me. Can I reach out and set a coffee time or something like that?
Perfect.
Next thing I know, I noticed it trickulated back onto Facebook from a different source, but the exact same data I had shared with this person. And so I
Wow.
thought, yes. And it kind of shut down the conversation because, you know, I'm just objective data. Here's the data.
They were
Make your own
also
conclusion.
one and two things were one person.
Right.
But I,
Wanna just.
Right.
what I really like though is being able to get objective information.
Right.
So I'm not gonna post it on Facebook because that's not my alley.
No, but if we
but-
know it, somebody asks us,
But then I can.
here you go.
speak
This come from the
knowledgeably.
superintendent and he said for us to share this.
Yeah.
That's transparency.
That's
Yeah.
transparency.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't post on any of those.
No.
I read them and I chuckle and I
Yeah.
read some more. And then I chuckle and I'm like, oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never comment on those. Sometimes it's so hard, but I choose absolutely no comment.
No,
Well,
but if
and
we
they
have
have-
that information,
Yeah,
we don't have to lie about anything or not have to keep our
No.
mouth quiet. We
Yeah,
can say, hey,
yeah.
this was on here. This is what our superintendent gave us.
And
And
I
he
would do-
wanted us to share this with you.
yeah, and
Absolutely.
I would absolutely do that in a private message, but I wouldn't do it on Facebook.
No, you don't.
Not as a board member, no. No,
You don't
but
wanna
if
do
you
that.
give it to a community member and then they give it to
And then they
the
screenshot
Facebook.
it and put it on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's their
Perfect.
choice
Yeah.
too. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
You
that's
bet.
what I always say, this is not me.
Here's the data.
I just think it helps, my opinion is helps alleviate more ruffled feathers from, well, Ristine said this and then Deb said that and then Ryan said this. And so I just don't.
Oh,
Yeah,
Don't go
go
there.
for it all.
Don't go there.
No.
Nope.
anyhow, that's fine.
Okay,
So anyway,
okay, let's get where the rubber meets the road. You guys have walked this path too. What about conversations with staff? Well, consider, yeah, you can consider refusing that in their policy BG. Tough to do in a small town when, you know, personal relationships. I get it. I violated my own policy BG, having conversations with staff. But I always disclose that you will speak with the superintendent. That this isn't just staying here, and then they can make that decision. Do I still want to have this conversation with the board member or not?
Right.
And that
Okay.
actually came up not long ago with said person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I said. I took the policy
Mhm.
and I actually screenshotted it and I sent them to her. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, this is what we have to do. This is the policy we have to follow.
Mhm.
I'm here for you. I'm, you know, but I can't listen to this, otherwise I'm biased.
Yep,
Very good.
So
Very good.
perfect.
Yeah.
And that's a tough
it
situation
is
to
because
be
it was
in.
a friend of mine and a very good friend of mine.
Yeah,
And I hugged her and I said, I love you and I want everything good for you, but I can't be involved.
So when you say you will speak with the superintendent, the board member, will speak with the superintendent. So
That you had that
before you,
conversation.
yes,
before you go any further with this conversation, I will have to take this to the superintendent.
right, because as a board member, I don't
Okay.
have any authority to address it.
Right.
There's nothing I can do. But the superintendent can do something. And
Yeah.
so if you tell this to me, I'm going to my superintendent, I'm
Gotcha.
gonna let them know and read them in on this.
The council staff are the same thing when a student comes to them and says, can I share something just between us? The correct answer is, it depends on what you share. If you share something that I have to report, I'm gonna have to report it. Just so you know. Because it could be a child abuse.
Yeah.
Situation. You can't just keep that a secret.
Nope.
Same thing with this. I mean, I will have to share this with the superintendent.
And the thing is that you are in violation of policy BG in doing this.
And
You're
by
out
hearing
of
it,
lane. You
yeah.
are having a conversation of substance with a member of the staff. And policy BG stipulates that all communication of substance between the board members and staff will go through the superintendent. So you're violating policy, making this maneuver. And that's why you have to close the loop with the superintendent to preserve that trust. Gotta. Don't ever have a conversation of substance, like a complaint or something. And that's a good way to clear that, because you're in a small town and I'm sure you have teachers and staff that are friends, and you're at someone's house and you're having some beers and teacher starts going off. You ask them, are you is this a complaint or are you just venting? Because if they're just venting, fine, vent
Yeah.
away. I can handle that. And it's going in one ear and out the other. But if it's a complaint, it's like, time out then.
Yeah.
We
That's
gotta
definitely been
take this
something we've
serious.
had to learn in the last 6 months. Yeah.
So,
It's tough,
on
like you said,
So
you
what if
can
they
care
say it's
about them.
venting and then
know.
goes to the complaint part of it?
Yeah.
Well, so
then
I
that's a
will-
trust issue between your friend.
Well,
I will share that.
Maybe they just thought about it more and thought, I gotta make a complaint about this.
Well,
So then
but-
you're,
But you disclose, I mean, if it gets serious, then you say, look, this is getting serious.
so even though you're venting, I will disclose
And
this if.
So I mean, I had that exact situation where it was venting and turned into a legal liability. And it was, I need to tell you, I don't have a choice any longer. I have to report this.
Yeah,
I know that you were talking to me. I have to report this. And then at that point, there's part of it too that protects myself in that,
Yeah.
that
I just don't like the whole gray area of venting because,
Especially after what we've been through.
well, I think
well,
it's,
that's, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
because they could think about it overnight and think, oh, this ain't venting anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to
I'm going
complain.
for it.
Yeah.
And in that situation, if you get pinched and you think you're biased, then recuse yourself from the
Yeah.
process.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah.
step away and say, I have had a conversation on this topic. I don't feel that I can be objective about it. I'm gonna recuse myself from the process.
Okay, that's probably the best.
That's the ethical thing to do, which is what I'm trying to get to here.
sorry.
Honor the conversation, avoid hearing details of a potential complaint, which we've talked about. Direct them to resources. It's the same protocol,
Yeah.
but slightly different, and the stakes are higher. Okay, and follow up the superintendent, of course. All right, this whole slide is, do you have any investigative capacity? Can you conduct interviews for fact finding? Correct, you do not. If you need to do that type or that work needs to be done, then you can retain a third party to do that. That's the whole point of this one. This one is to remind you that you will always take action on a complaint in a public meeting. Okay, except for one exception. What is it?
Kids.
Expulsion. I think you two were bringing it up earlier. We are gonna skip forward, get out of here. And there's, I mean.
He's like, you guys talk too much. it's
No,
fine."
no. I just want to get to for the board to individual, policy, yes. Individual board member authority, you know this. An individual board member exercises authority and responsibility of their position when the board is in legal session only. That's the only time we have authority.
Yeah.
Is when we gavel in. As soon as we gavel out, we're just John Q. Public, but the public doesn't know that. Neither
No.
does the staff. Let's see. No individual board member may direct the superintendent to action without board authorization. You knew that. Yes, policy BBF, board's best friend. This is your expectations for yourselves. There is no higher authority on this policy. You hold yourselves accountable to this. So I would recommend if you don't have a board operating agreement, you might want to consider getting one and referencing BBF. So a board operating agreement is optimally a one pager that is just a set of agreements that you have amongst yourself, focusing your attention on the things that you want to work on, like shorter meetings. Or
Bathroom breaks.
or
Yeah.
not bathroom break, not throwing chairs at the superintendent. You know, I'm being a little, it's late and we're hot and I'm being a little hyperbolic, but you get the idea that
Yeah.
it's just something to focus your attention. And a lot of it will stem out of policy BBF.
Now, what's in front of you, I think Shirley grabbed some examples, so you just have some examples to look at.
Went on this survey, and asked my fellow board secretaries for help, and this is what they. asked them.
Thank you so
I
much.
give
Thank you.
guys an idea.
Oh, yeah, policies BBF or board operating.
Operating agreements.
Oh, yeah. there's
Oh,
bunches.
Yeah.
We were working on that.
Oh, my colleague Steve Kelly helped make that. Hey, we made it to ethics, to the really boring stuff now. Okay,
Can we really have a bathroom break, please?
yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
About 5 minutes or so?
Yeah, I'm just about out of water.
I might run a little bit over, but maybe
Oh.
not. This is pretty.
We're used to
substantive.
that.
Yeah,
It's
we
the
do
same.
that often.
I don't need to,
Man, I'm gonna go back home and I'm gonna climb in my pool. It is hot.
Did you text me, Ristine? Oh, it says, hi, Ryan, Ristine Follett.
I didn't text you. Oh, I was like,
Thank you. I really like Gina Blanchett. She's a cool lady.
Everybody, I mean, I only really learned last few months about the listserv, and then when I went to the workshop and they talked about it, they came in at the board meeting and they're all going, you know, well, what should it look like? And da, 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 da. And I said, give me some time, you know, I'll send out something on the listserv and see what I get. And so many people responded, great.
Oh, yeah. Actually, do you have all the documents all in one place? Can you like drop them into a folder and send them to me?
Sure.
And I'll just tuck them away as examples.
Okay, sure.
Because people ask sometimes for examples of board operating agreements, and I should be here holding them. I didn't see your question go out, but I've been very.
No. No, and then when you sit here and go. 2 readings a month.
No, no.
Oh, what's bad enough already? Oh. They're a lot of work.
They are.
Everything else I have to do.
Well, maybe just one is what you need to do.
Well, I gave them the calendar, a draft calendar of what would be normally, but they wanted to wait and talk about it. So I gave them something to think about. And they can decide.
How many special meetings have you guys done where you add a meeting?
I bet you we've done probably 10. And that's the most, I mean, we never had, for years, we never had special meetings. I think we had one workshop, I think 2 with Mark. But since Sean's been here, we just keep having them. No.
Maybe it'd be easier on you just to do the 2 and then you know it's coming up and you just keep it in the pipeline. Keep your life a little easier.
And I learned about the Robert's Rule of Order in brief, so I got that.
I love that book. I'm still working my way through it, bookmarking it and sticky tabs and stuff.
Yeah.
but yeah, I really like it.
I think Sean's reading 3 books now, same time.
Yeah. In fact, I've been buying them books on, I don't call them on tape anymore, but
They'll come on,
No.
tape, but yeah,
I just listen to them when I'm driving down the road. So it's
Oh, there you go.
I'm on the road. That's how I get my reading done.
well, it helps pass the time too.
Helps pass the time. Yeah, I'm thinking the whole time, listening.
Resignation and talk to you, they wanted to help you.
How much time do we have? No, 15 minutes. Okay, ethics in 15 minutes or less.
15. What time we get
To
done?
say, we need to move that fan to blow back.
We
on.
started at 5, we're ending at 8.
Oh, I thought we said 9.
I thought we said 9.
I didn't,
We said 9.
Man, you guys want to go to 9?
Well, I mean, if we get it done in 15
Well, I
minutes.
mean, if you get it done before 9,
We got till
but-
yeah,
nine.
we'll be happy.
Okay, well, if you guys want to stay until 9, I'll turn it out. I'm talking about board stuff.
no
I'll
good
talk- I
conversations happen
love-
after 9 o'clock, right?
No good board work happens after 9. Okay, ethics, here we go. So you are public officials is the point of the slide. So the Legislative Assembly declares that service as a public official is a public trust, and that as one safeguard for that trust, the people require all public officials to comply with government ethics law. That's you. Okay. Yeah, you, any person who is serving in the state of Oregon, its political subdivisions, any other public body as an elected official. It's you. You are public officials. Legally so. This is really, this is what it really all boils down to. You are not allowed to gain financially in any way from your position. It's really, and if you can hold on to that concept, you can navigate the rest of this really easy. All the little scenarios, it's like, if I'm going to, if I could possibly benefit from this, I probably shouldn't do it. So conflicts of interest, this is the one that usually gives people fits. So there are potential conflicts of interest and actual conflicts of interest. So it's really the highlighted words are where you want to draw your attention. So public official takes official action that could financially impact him or her. Or a public official takes an official action that would, it definitely will have an impact on it. Positively, typically is where that's a problem. So potential or actual conflicts of interest. You can have a potential conflict of interest and still participate in the process, depending on the nature of it. The actual is when you really got to get yourself out of there.
I've had people ask me in lots of districts, it's a common question, that's why I'm bringing it up. What about a very close friend as opposed to a relative?
We're getting there.
Okay.
It's in the 15.
Who is a relative? So yeah, this is them. So spouse, parent, step parent, child, sibling, step sibling, son or daughter in law of the public official, spouse, parent, step parent, child, siblings. The short answer is no, friends are not included. It is people in your family. Although if that, they think there is a provision if someone lives with you. So if they're a resident in your home, let's see if it shows up in the text here. Any individual for whom the public official has a legal obligation to support or who receives public officials' employment benefits. Any individual for whom the public official provides benefits arising from the public official's public employment. Wow. So that that's legal language and I don't really understand that. Honestly. That's pretty squishy.
Which one?
The bottom.
Well, all this one, yeah,
Any
individual for whom the
individuals.
public official or candidate receives benefits arising from individual's employment. So if you are receiving a benefit of their employment and you're making a decision that pertains to them, then that would be a possible benefit to you. Wow, you can see how this gets convoluted.
Hence the question.
Yeah. And so you would have to have some sort of fiscal connection with that individual in some way for that.
Right.
Based, oh, go ahead.
We argued about this a lot before because of Roger and I. Roger would never have a conflict. Sister or not, he just said, it's not a conflict, I'm not benefit. So it was always an argument that we all had about it.
And I wonder if it's one of those things where we say somebody could potentially derive a conflict from
Sure.
this. I'm still feeling comfortable to vote on this. I'm just gonna put it out there. And then if it's for, I don't have to vote. I can just abstain at that point.
Right.
I mean,
Or recuse yourself from it. Yeah.
And we've done that when we thought there could be a potentially, but
And that's how you navigate this, is that if you have a potential conflict, just surface it in the public meeting and rely on your colleagues to help you navigate it.
Yeah.
And if the group feels uncomfortable, then recuse yourself. If everybody's like, no, it's all right, then you're
Right.
probably safe to proceed.
A situation I have is that my sister works here and
Mhm.
she's a teacher.
Yep.
And if we go into a session where we're deliberating on a raise or something, I usually step out because she's my sister.
Good question. I think there's a slide for that. Let's see, conflict of, okay, so scenario, but we're gonna come to that. That's the class exception question. So, and I'll just teach it. Yeah, your sister works at the district, is part of probably one of the bargaining units, right?
Not sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
so when the board takes up that contract, you might feel that there's a conflict of interest there, particularly if there's a nice COLA involved.
Mm,
But the exception is that you're making a decision for the whole class of employees, not just your sister in that situation. If the decision pertained just to your sister, then yes, then there would probably be a potential conflict. But because it's for the whole class, it's allowed. You don't have to recuse
Well,
yourself.
you sometimes that they will vote on a stipend for teaching something extra.
Mhm.
And
That's
that's what,
singular though.
that's when I feel like I can't do it.
And it applies to one person.
Yes.
Yeah, you might want to back yourself out of that just to be safe.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I would step away from that.
Well, there's enough people to vote that it doesn't matter one way or
Exactly.
another,
Correct.
so you may as well make it right.
okay, so then I have a question on that. So the action's out there, the second gets placed. Can Linda, even though she may recuse herself from that vote, it doesn't mean she doesn't have good information to share with her partners on the board about that stipend or what that does for the students or how those resources being allocated. Can she have a say in the discussion? Or does when she recuse herself or when anybody recuses themselves, do they step out of discussion also?
They should step.
So
from the discussion.
completely have no part of it. Okay.
Yeah, because that discourse could bias
Right.
people. We
Okay.
don't want that. So there's two things in play here for consequences. The first one is if you have an actual conflict of interest, that's a violation of law and you can be liable. But also you're also playing with public trust. And so that's the other consequence here. Is that even if you don't, even if, there's a potential conflict of interest and the majority of people in the public thinks it looks hinky, then you're losing public trust. And we don't want to do that. That reduces the credibility of the board. Okay, so you're developing an RFP, a request for proposals for a roof repair. Your relative owns a roofing business that will probably submit a bid. Do you have a conflict of interest?
Yep.
Potential, for sure. Yeah. How about this one? Public official takes official action that could financially impact him or her, a relative or business involving a public official or relative. Oh. Yeah, so that's what it's explaining what it is. Could be. Board is voting on whether to approve a contract with the roofing company. Your spouse owns the roofing company. Do you have a conflict of interest? Yeah, that's the big red flag right there. That's money in your pocket. So yeah, it would financially impact them. So yeah, what happens if I have a conflict of interest? Yeah, you disclose it. If you have yeah, we've already discussed this. Following the public announcement, the public may participate in the official action on the issue that gave rise to the conflict of interest. But if it's an actual conflict of interest, you must refrain. Okay. Exceptions. Okay. So conflict of interest disclosure. So conflict of interest that arises from membership interests of a particular business occupation that is a prerequisite for holding the pub. That doesn't really apply to us. The second one is the class exception. So if the financial impact of the official action would impact the public official, relative or business of the official of the public, relative or business of the public official of the same degree as others in an identifiable group or class. You can tell this was written by an attorney, right? Yeah.
It's very explanatory.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're affecting a whole group, then it's not a conflict, even though you may have a.
You
know,
should
a
say they'll
state
have a
that-
potential conflict.
I would
Okay.
surface it,
Okay.
but I'm
That's what I
paranoid.
need to know.
Well-
I'm really risk averse. So.
Is
that's-
this an instance where if you were voting, talking about doing a bond, whereas every board member is going to be a taxpayer, so that would not be a conflict, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely in the affected class in that respect, and you would be negatively impacted, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
You'd
well,
be
it could
paying
be,
additional taxes, right,
yeah.
to pay the bond.
When he's saying like a union contract agreement, that's for all the teachers.
Mm.
So it's a group, not just one
Yeah.
individual.
Even though my spouse may be a teacher, if she were a teacher, I could still vote on that contract ratification because I'm voting on the whole class, not just the one person. If the conflict arises from an unpaid position as an officer or member of a nonprofit that is tax exempt, so you wouldn't have a material benefit in that instance. All right, nepotism.
Oh, our favorite.
Yeah. Okay. You can serve as a reference for a relative. You can give a letter of recommendation. You can even engage in ministerial acts of appointment. So being on a committee, processing that. You may not appoint employee. You can't be the hiring authority. You can't fire them. Yeah, you can't interview. You don't get to, and this is the thing, if you're on the committee, you can't just be in part of the discourse of the committee, debate, yeah, or directly supervise. Pretty clear?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
nepotism, yeah. You can support them in those ways, but that's it. Okay. This is where it's a little more tangible here. So gifts, so gift means anything of economic value that is offered to a public official or candidate or relatives or members of the household of a public official or candidate without cost, discount, or as a forgiven debt. The offer is not made or available to members of the general public who are not public official candidates or the relatives, blah, 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 blah. So if you get something because of your office or a person in your relative or member of your household gets something because of your position, because of that connection. That's a gift. Okay? Doesn't mean you can't take the gift. Stay with me. So you need to consider the source of the gift. And this is the key thing here. Do they have legislative or administrative interest? So do they have a stake in decisions that you make on the board? And it can be pretty tenuous.
So if somebody gives you a gift for your vote, it'd be illegal.
Highly. But this could be, I'm just giving you a gift because, yeah, whatever. But I have an interest, say, if I have a kid,
So if you have a kid in school, you have an interest.
I have a legislative interest, particularly if the board is about to take up discussing the program that my kid is involved with. I got some legislative interest there or administrative interest. So that constitutes a gift. All right.
Sorry, Michael won't be doing work for anybody in this room anymore. No more electrical work.
He never did come visit me in November.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm just kidding. He bills for that.
So the but-for test. So this is really for, and really just pay attention to the bottom part here. But for your position as a public official, you would not have an opportunity to obtain this financial benefit or avoid this financial detriment. Okay? So it's all about but for. Yeah, but for my position on the school board, I would not have access to this. But for examples, oh yeah, this is really good. So frequent flyer miles, you use your card with frequent flyer miles to go to to NSBA conference. Can you take the frequent flyer miles?
No, because you wouldn't have gotten them if you didn't have to fly to that position.
Yep, that's exactly right. You wouldn't be going to NSBA, but for your position on the school board. So you can't take the frequent flyer miles. Credit card points, hotel points, yeah. Use of school vendor accounts. Never seen it, but you wouldn't have access to that. You can't take home toilet paper.
Even in the pandemic.
You cannot take home toilet paper from the school district, even if the staff gives it to you. You can't take it. Discounts, use of school equipment. So yeah, you wouldn't have access to that, but for your position on the school board.
I guess I wouldn't have thought about the frequent flyer mile. Because if I was going to the conference and had to pay for my own hotel, then I would.
Yeah, that has gotten people. That
I
one,
can also see
I've
that-
heard stories of those.
So I can see that to be really dicey though too, because hotel, airline, credit card are all reimbursable products from school.
Correct.
So therefore, you're net zero, but you still gained. You reimbursed your cost, plus you gained from that.
Right,
And
I
that's
wouldn't
where
have
I
thought
can see
anything of it.
that.
I'd use my Alaska Air Mile to book the hotel, because I do that with everything. I use my Alaska Air for everything.
School board members in Oregon have been busted for that.
Oh,
Has happened. I have heard stories.
And busted means
Yeah, what do they do to them?
They got turned into the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, and then they paid a fine.
There's a fine?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
they're only $75.
$75 fine. Is it for that one?
Well, if you get 200,
Oh,
get away.
Yeah.
So, one more question. It says not, you can't use the equipment that, we've been authorized to be able to take home a laptop to learn how to use board books on, if we're signed out. Is that acceptable or not?
So that's for district use.
You're
So
not
that
keeping it
personal.
forever, right?
And you
Like,
don't keep it
No.
forever, you're not materially benefiting. So it's for district use. Can you run your Etsy business on the
No,
district Chromebook?
no.
No, that would not be appropriate. You might get in trouble for that.
Okay,
What about like, so this is a great example. So I'm pretty close with my colleagues on the Corvallis board, and say we go after the board meeting, we go down to Beer 30 and get a beer. Can we buy each other beers?
No,
no.
you can't up to 51.
Up to $50. There you go. You could up to $50, but as soon as you start doing that, you have to log it,
Why?
because you can only
Be
take up to
considered
$50 in gifts, within a year from a person with legislative interest. And your colleagues definitely have legislative interest.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
So,
Sorry, I'm not buying you here.
yeah, when I go to lunch with the county commissioner or something like that, that's always Dutch, because we have legislative interest, and
Yeah.
so we just can't do it.
Kind of like a police officer. I guess that totally makes sense. You can't buy police officers food or anything either.
Right.
I've done it and I pay it forward, like in the line behind me. And I'm like, tell him to pay it forward. Cause he could do that.
There you go.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I would recommend, just don't take any gifts. Don't allow people to buy you things if there's a hint of legislative interest, so you don't have to log it. Not in, 9 years on the Corvallis School Board, I haven't logged gifts at all, because I just don't make them.
Right.
Keep your life simple.
That's easy.
Mhm.
Mhm. Because, you don't want,
Make it real simple.
and then, you don't want to have to go to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, and of course, God forbid that, the newspaper gets a hold of it. And,
That's not the fine that does the damage, it's the news report.
yeah,
Well, and it's the implication behind the words, right? So it happened once. How many other times has it happened? It's a story that somebody else tells themselves. It's not all the words that are printed.
Mhm.
mhm,
It's the assumptions that are made from it. So
okay. Oh, there's more to talk about. Board staff communications, policy BG. We've actually talked about this
Mhm.
quite a bit, so I'm not going to belabor it. And I could read the words, but we've already discussed it. Let's talk about your email. So this is really about so communications to and by and among. I guess I should stop and say, are there any questions about ethics before I move change units? Sorry, I'm getting
No,
rummy.
I think we smothered it pretty good.
It's not super complex.
No.
Just be good ethical people, and don't take advantage if you can avoid it. Okay, so communications to, by, and among a quorum of board members outside of a legally called board meeting in their capacity as board members shall not be used for the purpose of discussing district business. This includes electronic communication. Electronic communications among board members shall be limited to messages not involving deliberation, debate, decision-making, or gathering of information on which to deliberate. So the wording of this is really, really important. So I want to draw your attention to those last words. So deliberating, debating, decision-making, or gathering information on which to deliberate. So this is the people often are startled when I say, so for example, if this board wanted to take up a resolution, you could have two members get together and work together on a resolution to bring it before the board. With a 7, it's 3 members. It's less than a quorum. So you can't, but you can meet in numbers. So can you go to like a fundraiser and have the whole board there?
You can, but you can't discuss anything
Business.
board related or any kind of business.
You can't deliberate, debate, make
Right.
decisions, or gather information on which to deliberate in that setting.
Right.
You can have a quorum of the board there, but as long as you're not engaging that, you're okay.
okay, we have a question now. So you had given us some information in the past that, we could email Sean questions.
Okay.
Like I email Sean a question and he replies and BCCs the entire board. So he's giving the communication of his reply to the entire board.
Yep.
But to me, that does fall under gathering of information on which to deliberate, because often, for me, those questions are often related to the agenda that we're going to talk about, but it's like, rather than calling for a point of information in the, in the board meeting, going, I don't have enough information, now we have to delay this, it's what business knowledge do we need to know prior to the board meeting?
The key
And-
piece there is it's one direction.
Okay,
So it went from you, went to the superintendent, and then went out to the board, sharing that information.
he sends it out to the board.
I sent it to her.
Right.
Because I
Okay.
can share with you. guys,
Sure.
Okay,
You know,
The second that Ryan then emails you and says, I do not like this idea and I'm voting no on it,
that's a problem then.
then you got a public meeting
Okay.
or you're bumping up against it.
bumping up against it. yeah.
I just want to make sure that the practice we're using to make sure that we're getting the information or
Mhm.
getting, or.
Yeah.
Okay, my biggest pet peeve, makes absolutely no sense for Robert, me, and Linda to email him the same question. If I have a question, I'm just gonna get it there and then he'll shoot it
Yeah.
out to the board, so we all have that information.
Totally
But
fine.
just want to make sure that's,
Oh, yeah.
Best
appropriate.
practice.
okay,
Totally fine.
Cool.
Can you get on a common email thread to discuss how you're gonna get to annual convention? Who's gonna ride share? You know, we're gonna like, who's gonna carpool?
Mhm.
Because who wants to drive to Portland alone, that'd be a drag. Can you do that?
Yes.
Yeah, Yeah, or are we gonna have that meeting, on this date? Yes, you can have that discussion. And you can say, can we have a meeting on this date? This is my availability. So logistical stuff, that's fine, because you're not deliberating, debating, decision-making, or gathering information on which to deliberate. So as long as you're not working on actual board work, you're okay.
But still, the board chair, can the board chair call each individual board member and say, hey, Ryan, what are your thoughts on this?
that was something that came up at the conference. That was like, can't I just call each board member and kind of see how they feel about a vote?
No.
And I believe you may have been leading that session and I was like, I wonder if they can or not.
Was that the leadership session?
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't do that. But as board chair, you can check in with and you should, sit down with your colleagues and say, how's it going? How are meetings going for you? What's burning out of control? what should we work on? What's working well? You can do that stuff. And there might be a little bit of topic around what's going on with the district that creeps into that, but we're not going to deliberate and we're certainly not going to go, Ryan, can I count on you vote on
No, but what about, and we may have done this wrong, but during some legal problems, we needed to know something for the attorney right now. And it had to be pretty much a unanimous thing and everybody was at work and we needed to know. So is it okay to then call and say, what are your feelings on this?
That sounds logistical. I don't know that you're not disclosing the nature of the conversation. So but it feels logistical in nature.
we weren't voting. There was no deliberation to vote.
Well, kinda, no, kinda.
It was
I remember
guidance to
that.
give, but it was guidance to give to Sean.
On how to, but it sounds
An
like,
attorney had something that they needed to know so they could project it in their deliberation negotiations. And so Sean wanted to know how we felt about it. He talked to me, I told him what was up, told her what was up, everybody on the board, what was up. Did they feel comfortable with that or not? And then I gave it back to Sean. He talked to the attorney and made the decision.
That was at the
right, because the
request of the
superintendent
attorney.
superintendent made the decision.
Mhm.
Right. And it was
That's-
timely. They had to know like with.
That's the
Wow.
key piece there. And so, and superintendents will do that from time to time. If they got an operational thing going on, they want to test the water with the board. They're not getting a hard decision. It's not legally binding.
No.
They just want to test the water, so they'll call each board member individually and to see, hey, where are you at on this?
Well, would it be better for him to do that or for the chair to do that?
Yeah, him,
Yeah,
because he's
so
making the decision.
Not the chair.
No,
Correct.
But that's where we went wrong, I guess, because
I don't
Sean,
think you didn't go. Oh,
Sean
did it?
asked me to do it, I did it.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
thought we had to go through. the board
Well, I
chair,
mean,
So,
But we
and I
still
suppose,
didn't, but we still, there was no deliberation, like, when we had our conversation, we didn't deliberate on what the right, the yes, no answer was. It was this, I stated, this is my feeling. Okay, I'll let Sean know. Thank you.
yep, and that works. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Again, and then you shared that sentiment with the superintendent.
Yes.
yeah,
I'm not an attorney and this is not a legal opinion, but I think you're okay. Because the superintendent's making the decision.
So from this day forward, if we have that position again,
I'll just go.
he needs to,
Yeah, I mean, that's the
Make it
safer way to
cleaner.
do it.
yeah.
But I mean, in full disclosure, I mean, I've had my chair in Corvallis do the same thing. I don't know that I ever did it when I was chair.
I
don't
think about
recall
it as
doing
though, like, if the walls crumble or if something comes down, did you have your board support in the decision you made? Like, you made an operational decision. Did you have your board support in that? And it was never that we voted yes or no on it. It was just,
I think,
made sure I was operating the way the board would want me to.
well, it goes deeper than that.
Okay,
Because the superintendent is using the board as a think tank.
Okay.
So if we could make really efficient and really good decisions with one human being,
we wouldn't need a board.
we wouldn't use boards. We'd just
Mhm.
have a superintendent and they would run schools and that would be it.
Mhm.
And we wouldn't live in a democratic republic. We would live in a dictatorship.
Mhm.
And it is more efficient. You just don't get as good as decisions.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Mhm.
so that's what the superintendent was using the board as a think tank.
Gotcha.
It's like, I'm checking my blind spots. Because each of you brings a unique perspective and experience to the district.
Mhm.
That's why we have boards. Oh, did it die finally? No. It's over. That's it. No more slides. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, it's broken. It's like fully broken. Here.
It's too hot, probably.
Up there.
Oh,
There you
email
go.
protocol. There we go. So what's your email protocol?
I have one.
So is there a school board at LC or school board at lc.or.us? Wait, is it?
Did we get it?
We each
Did
have
we
our
get it
own.
fixed?
And then you have a unified
Never
board
got it
email?
Working yet.
Remember the community, if you were outside of a staff member, you weren't able to email it. Did Nathan ever get that fixed? Yes, we have one. We might still have to fix it for the community to use it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about the community. I just know I'm using it. Sorry.
No,
You're talking about grouping.
A group.
it's a group
A
email.
board email, yeah.
Group.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's a one email, school board at lc.or.
and then it just goes out to everybody.
Well, no,
No, we have access to it, right?
yeah, it'll come to all board members, but it's a one unified email
Yeah.
for the board.
We have that.
You do have that. Good. Okay, so that's important. Who answers that email?
Depends on what it is, usually the chair.
I don't
Okay,
think we've ever talked about that, though.
Yeah, because we don't answer specific questions. We either leave it to Sean or the board chair. Yeah, to have that
glad I
discussion.
raised this question.
No idea.
So yeah,
Not either, but I-
Yeah,
correct. So the chair is the spokesperson for the board. And so the chair should acknowledge receipt, respond if it's appropriate for the board to respond to it. If it's not, if it's an operational issue, then it's going to get handed off to the superintendent. And the superintendent will field it.
Yeah.
After the receipt has been acknowledged, then board members can go ahead and respond to the person that sent it.
Oh, after somebody's acknowledged that they've read it.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
good
can
to
say
know.
thank you, or I appreciate, or
Thanks for the
you can,
input.
or you can launch into a whole email conversation with the person. It's up to you. You're independent elected officials, so you can interact with the public.
I
But-
choose not to.
Well, we had a whole lot of that going on for a while.
Just a year.
Everybody was sending emails to the board.
Yeah,
And they were generally complaints and operational stuff.
yep. And so the chair, I mean, if you're addressing it, if people are providing input on a issue that the board is already aware of and is working on, then you can have a nice scripted response. If you're getting dozens of these emails, you can just copy, you just copy paste, say, thank you for your input, the board is, blah, 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 et cetera. In Oregon, I think the expectation is that people emailing school boards expect to at least have a acknowledgement of receipt.
Or why add it?
Yeah, they don't like silence.
Yeah, and we've done that a lot. I know I have. Thank you for emailing. I've received.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's caustic and horrible, just saying thank you for your input,
Mhm,
remain professional at all times, and
mhm.
move on.
I've definitely done
Any questions about email?
that. Mhm.
Moving on.
Wait, one more. When they send it to the board, but they also individually send it to each board member and it comes
Ah,
to.
yeah.
That's a good question.
So if they send it in after you've been on board for a while, you'll be able to detect these emails where they send it to you, Ryan, but you can just tell by the way it's worded, it probably went to all the other members. What I do with those is I forward it to the chair and say, hey, did you get one of these? and check in. If they didn't, then I'll respond to that person because it came just to me. And in which
Okay.
case, if you as an individual receive an email from a constituent, please respond to that. Because it came to you directly. But if it went to all of them, and that happens all the time, it just does, then let the chair respond to it. And of course, the chair CCs the board on the response so they can see that go up. Good question. I guess I have stuff on public meetings here. I didn't know that. Do we want to keep going? We can come back to this tomorrow night. If we,
8:20.
see how much we got. How much do we?
Are we gonna go from 5 to 9 tomorrow night, or for 5 to 8? Are you scheduled 5 to 8?
This is the 19th. What did I have in here? I didn't know. I planned all this for next time.
Oh, look, we're already ahead next week or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Next week.
What happened to that?
That's how my
Actually,
week's gone.
Wanting to get in next week?
actually, I would like to go over this Senate. If you'll indulge me for just a little bit longer, and then I'll cut you guys loose. This actually is something.
You wrote it down for you today?
All
That's why
day.
you had to go to.
So I had to go into town, but I didn't have a babysitter, so I couldn't go to my office. And I was like, okay, I'll go to Michael's office. He had Pioneer, and I would have had my kid at his office, which would have been going to my sister-in-law's. She also had Pioneer, so I think I'd have a hotspot.
Oh, man.
I worked to have a hotspot with no, like, I had to turn off my video because if I turned on my video, then they couldn't hear me. I was like,
Okay.
I was at her house.
I see.
So this is actually an important topic,
Like,
and it's important for you guys. Because you've been forced to struggle with this. And I mean, boards all over Oregon have really been struggling with this. So just how do we stay focused on the needs of kids? This is where that stat came from. I quoted you 36 hours. This is how many hours you're doing. You shouldn't meet for more than 3 hours. We're violating that rule, but we're not going to violate it really bad. But yeah, 36 hours, that's not a lot of time at all to do really, really important work for our kids in our district. So you need to really think about what are the required things. There are required things that we have to do that have to be on our agenda. And then what are those discretionary things? What can we choose to put on our agenda? And what can we carve out of there that isn't improving outcomes for kids? Yeah, it really comes down to how are you going to spend those 36 hours? So really, and that's tough. It's really, really tough. And yeah, and how are you going to decide on that? Who is going to decide how you're going to spend those 36 hours in a year? These are deep questions. There's not easy answers to that. I mean, you could just shove it all on your chair and she can decide which logs go on the fire. But I mean, it really, we were talking about goals and strategic planning that really fits into this piece of making that decision. How are you going to spend your time?
And just that process alone, developing the vision, mission, district goals, priorities, that's going to be a lot of that 36 hours. It's gonna be,
Oh yeah,
you know,
it will be more than 36 hours.
but it is also vital work.
Yeah.
It drives the whole system.
So I just want you to really hang on to that number 36 and just think about it because you guys only meet once a month. So just hang on to that when things get tough and people are pushing you and there's things that are distracting you. Just remind yourself we've only got 36 hours in a year to get this work done. So yeah, we are pushed and pulled. We have competing roles. On one side, we are elected by the public and we are expected to, we are accountable to the public. We hear from them a lot. But on the other side, we're also trustees of the interest of our children. And that delegate role and the trustee role are often not in alignment. And less so, it seems, in recent years. And that just makes our work really, really difficult. So we're being pulled in opposite directions all the time. Research shows that boards that, under normal circumstances, emphasize about 70% of their attention to their trustee role tend to have better student outcomes. That means you're going to have to spend 30% of your time not listening to the public.
That's really hard.
Simple for me. I'm by myself all day.
Not me, I haven't come in the cafe all the time.
Have you thought about asking the question to them of how their suggestion or concern impacts student outcomes for the benefit of the students?
I haven't.
They may not have an answer for it. They might just be using it as a springboard. And I think it's okay to say, I appreciate hearing that, but I'd really love to hear ideas that you think we could do things to impact the student. And then you can talk to Sean about those too.
Oh, I send them all. the
I
time.
know, but I'm just saying, like, people will, in my experience, when you start asking people for resolution
Yes.
and ideas for solution, they're like, well, Deb doesn't want to hear me complain, that she wants me to come up with like the impact statement. And a lot of people stop having negative statements or only those the focuses.
When you put some of your trustee role on their plate, it's like, okay, I gotta think about kids. If I gotta think about you, you gotta think about kids too.
It's actually a good idea. I'll try and start remembering to use that. Because I do get it often.
Mhm.
Well, you're in a public, like in and out, like you're in that. That's like working at the Merc. You'd get people in a revolving door every day.
Mhm.
And I don't mind listening to people and their ideas. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mind that at all. I mean, that's part of why I'm here.
It's a tough role, Deb, and I feel for you in your situation.
I understand.
My wife was like it when she used to be one of my employees. She would get it all day long too, because they would be talking to her, wanting her to bring it home to me.
Mhm.
And it was difficult for her. She always had to say, I'm not Sean. If you want to see Sean, he's up
see
there.
Mm,
Go see
Well,
Sean.
and like I said, I don't mind people coming and talking to me and even bouncing ideas off me.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
of
I'm
course,
totally cool with that, because that's why I'm here,
of
is to
course.
help people.
Mhm.
But, yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh, let's take that to Sean. Do you want his phone number?
Yeah, yeah. I'll talk with him.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, strategic plan. I mean, and these are the guiding questions. Vision, is this topic going to take us to our final destination? Do having feminine hygiene products in all bathrooms, is that going to take us to our final destination?
It's a little strange to me personally, but
It's a discussion that you can have. Is this topic part of what we need to do to, you know, that's what mission is all about. What do we need to be doing? Is this topic aligned to the board and district priorities? Will this topic advance one or more of our goals? I don't know. You guys need to have one, but you can see how a strategic plan really grounds you. It's like, if this isn't taking us where we want to go, we don't want to talk about it.
I like that. I don't want to waste, I don't want
I
his
even put it
time
in there.
wasted on something that we're not gonna do, like something that it doesn't feel like we're gonna move. So it's like, we're here for that 36 hours, but we pay him to be here that way more than that.
Mhm.
And there's so much work to do here right now. Where's the value of
Mhm.
the dollar, the impact, all of that? And
So I keep taking the district priorities document to you guys, not just for you. I want to make sure I'm educating the staff and the public and see where we're heading. But yeah, I need direction and guidance. I mean, you look at that district priorities list, it's some heavy lifting, you know, of that. What do you want to see for priorities? And we narrow that down and say, okay, Sean, we want you to focus on these 3 items. That's your main focus. Yeah, work on these others, but these are your main focus. And that's stuff we could have in terms of our strategic plan, our vision, mission.
I think that's a good idea.
I love this idea of strategic abandonment. Letting stuff go.
Yeah.
You only got 36 hours.
Yeah.
You don't have any time to waste. Okay. I throw up equity lens. This is, but it doesn't have to necessarily be about equity. I mean, it's just a document for interrogating based with look fors. What are you looking for? Maybe, you care about equity is going to look different in every community. Equity downtown is different than up here. Your kids look different than kids down in Corvallis. So, I mean, you could use an equity lens, but it's going to be operationalized differently. But yeah, again, it's questions will help you interrogate a particular topic or policy or action or whatever to make sure it's aligned with where you want to go. And then, of course, coming back to the focus framework,
Mhm.
another great tool for retaining focus. If you're getting off base, you're not sure, you feel that the board is getting handsy and getting into operations, get out the focus framework and start working on that. It's a time honored tool. So, and boy, you guys can relate to this. Yeah, when
I don't see any lightning.
Is that a sinking ship? I think it is.
yeah, when it feels like you're up in the Bering Sea. Yeah, when it's really bad, come back to this.
Yep.
Remind yourself to do what's right for kids. Is this an adult problem or is this a kiddo problem?
It's always an adult problem. Yeah, does not
Oftentimes.
care.
Oftentimes it is.
But is it an adult problem that's making it a kiddo problem? Like, are we impacting them negatively by handling some of what happened in the last 3 months that were adult problems negatively impacted
Oh,
our
gosh,
children in the
yes.
classroom because of the talk. I mean, because we are so small.
Well,
I'm,
the emotion within the staff was pretty high too, and they didn't always, we're not always capable of keeping that from the kids.
Yes. Agreed.
yeah, adult problems can become kiddo problems for sure.
Mhm.
We've been wrestling with the feminine hygiene products in all bathrooms question. We're all kind of like going, but is that an adult problem or is that a kiddo problem? Do the kids really care?
Well, I can kind of see what some of the boys are gonna do. I mean, I raised boys, I know exactly what they do. So, maybe. I mean, I'm throwing it out there because I know it's gonna be an issue
I think it'll become just another thing on the wall.
eventually, but not
Yep.
before
That's,
it's.
that's.
I can tell you in Corvallis, we've been doing it for years. It's not a big deal.
for a while, it's gonna be a little
We're a
bit
small
more.
school, we're a little different.
A little different,
Yeah,
but you have ADA ramps, it's like you get used to stuff. It's like,
in time.
There used to be feminine projects here in the girls' room, but it was a charge thing. You had to put a quarter in or something.
yeah,
Is it gonna be still a charge?
No.
No.
It's free.
No, it's all free. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
free.
free.
That's
Oh,
Yeah.
that is gonna be a problem.
Well,
Sorry.
when the boys' bathroom is empty the day one.
I have boys, I know exactly what
uh,
Yeah, there's some districts
Anyhow.
already complaining about the expense of keeping them.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, think about
Dispensers.
it, Zach, Russell, Cody, Solomon, Gabe, Henry. Do I need to say more? You don't know those boys,
No.
but everybody else here
I
does.
know the types.
So whenever I get upside down doing board work, this is the question I come back to. What's right for kids? I think you can govern a whole nation with that question. I think I would love it if members of Congress held that in their head all the time.
Yes, and legislatures, state legislatures, and that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vincent, but that's another extension of any school board is their connection to representatives for the state
Oh,
legislature.
yeah. I mean, you can always reach out to them. And
Yes.
goodness knows, many of the people, at least in the Oregon legislature, have been school board or are school board members.
Yes,
Yeah, no,
Yes.
absolutely. There's a strong connection there.
yes.
But yeah, I wish we ran our communities on this question.
Mhm.
Let's do what's right for kids. You can't go too far wrong if you keep that in the center of your decision making. So when people are coming and screaming and yelling at you, just go,
Mhm.
is this an adult problem or is it a kiddo problem? At the end of the day, what's going to be right for our kids?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I was onboarding our new PIO today, and we were talking about just this. I said, we were talking about some of the tension situations that the district has gone through and everything. She said, well, how should I be focusing my writing? And I said, that's it right there.
Yep.
Kids. So that's what binds everybody together. Whether, you're on one side of the issue or the other, we all can come around and common focus on kids.
Mhm.
It brings a community together, it brings a school district together, it brings parents together. Just focus on kids. She goes, and yeah, that's what I want to see in what you're writing. Focus on kids.
Yep. Let's see what else I have here. Oh, I think that's it. So I'll take you back to the beginning where we started and back to the research. This is a causal chain. This is actually a causal chain that Tom Alsbury created. As individual board members, we bring our unique skills, experience, demeanor into the boardroom. It affects how the board functions. It affects, your culture over time. The work that this board is doing now will outlast you. You are creating a message in a bottle for the board, the LC board of tomorrow. you know, and that affects, you know, that it affects the organizational culture. You feel the temperature going down in your organization. And next year, you're gonna see a difference in classroom instruction. It's gonna find its way. Because when the school board does something right that night, it finds its way into the classroom the next day.
Yes, it does.
So don't ever think that you don't matter or what you do doesn't matter. It's crucially important. That's it. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank
Class
you.
dismissed.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for bringing dinner, Deb.
Yes, thank you, Deb.
Oh my
You're
goodness.
welcome.
Yeah, it took me a while to get through it. Because I was talking to it. It was delicious.
Isn't that yummy? Yes.
I'll make dessert tomorrow, I promise.
Oh, good.
And we'll make a salad with mashed potatoes.
That would be amazing. I would love that.
Okay, I'll make this.
Did I get all my forks back over here with you guys?
Oh, I
I put mine in, there was a growing pile on the left side.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vincent.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank
All good
you.
stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna get a little more nuts and bolts.